Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Good evening and welcome to birthday night here on Spaced Out Radio. Yes, old Davey turned the big 5-0 at 11:30 this morning, and thank goodness I made it this far. And thank you all for the birthday wishes all over social media. Very much appreciated. My birthday present, Grant Cameron tonight, my hero, my legend, and my mentor in this field. And I know he hates that type of accolade, but I really don't give a shit. I don't. I'm gonna tell him that anyways and forever. That is the truth. We're talking his new book, Jimmy Carter and UFOs. And all of you who are here tonight, we got Race Fan in the gold medal position. Robert Lamoth taking home the silver. Laura Lobbs with a nice bronze medal tonight. Hi, Roy Boy. Human Carl, not to be misconstrued with Alien Carl. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your service in the United States Air Force. We appreciate it, Human Carl. Lisa C., how are you? Simon in Australia. Donna, how are you? Hello, Jenny and Be More Dan. Be More Dan will be signing autographs after the show. Line up to the left of the studio, if you don't mind, to the left of the studio. Let's continue on with our roll call. Hello, Allison Singh. How are you? Kathy Evans, Sandra Kincaid. Sandra will be signing autographs after the show as well. Line up to the right of the studio, if you don't mind, to the right of the studio. Mike Arrington, good to see you. Sandy B., nice to have you back. And Susie B., good to see you. Ozzy Sue, thanks for coming on in. And Chris 716. And who else do we have here? Let's scroll on down. And we have next up on the list here, Kurt M., good to see you. As well as Dirty Filth. And who else do we have here? Let's scroll on down. Boy, big conversation going on. Brown Dwarf, good to see you. Rugged Source, thanks for coming on in. Vash the Impaler and in his amazing hair, good to see you. And there's, who else? Millennium, my man. War Criminal, Glenn John McEnroe, the pride of Wimbledon. Good to see you all. Thank you for coming in. Nancy Thames, how are you? Doug Shelby is here. The Doug Shelby has arrived, which means we can officially start this show. The lovely and talented Kira, thank you for joining us. Chillgasm, Timothman, good to see you both. W. David Page, Crystal J, thank you for joining us as we move on here. And where are we here? Area 51, JSCO, Roger Murray, how are you? Thank you for coming on in. And let's see, there's Nicole Sakic. Yeah, Greg knows her. Jacques Landry, welcome to SOR chat. Marty Burback, good to see you. And who else do we have here? Sagittarius Dad. And who else is here? Uncle Bones, good to see you. Emmy Tong, River Dogma, thank you for joining us, guys. And Gizmo, Doubleday, Hadley, thank you for coming on in. Luscious Jules, Video Game Zombie, and Cat Chaser, thank you so much for kicking off the Super Chat tonight. The Super Chat is a wonderful way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. So thank you so much. Esmeralda, Monica, thank you for coming on in. Human Carl, we appreciate the Super Chat. Thank you for the love, Human Carl. We love you too. And the feeling is mutual. Lightwalkers, good to see you. And Spacey Tree, Big Dog, and Chris Teen, thanks for coming on in. Greg.com Maloney, excuse me. How are you? Shade Viking. Von Patrick, good to see you. Oob to Joe's Main, you've got aliens. And Abnormal Investigations, TMI, good to see you. Hi, Paramarv. And Polaris Sucks, good to see you guys. Love V Love, thank you for joining us. And where are we here in our roll call? Let's take a little peeky poo here. Mike Bothwell, good to see you. Uncle Bones, thank you for the super sticker, my friend. Really appreciate that. And let's see, where are we here? So we got 10 seconds before we're going to go here, and we're probably going to have to type out the rest. Susan Alloway, thank you for joining us. Hi, Body Tech, good morning to you. And for the rest of you, horns up. Let's rock. From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on Odyssey Radio, TalkStream Live, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Join us, will you, at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the Newswire, check out our swag as well. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. We got a power show of information tonight. Legendary author and researcher Grant Cameron talks about his new book involving former President Jimmy Carter. Then in hour number 3, Steve Stockton from Among the Missing YouTube channel is going to join us for another creepy story, followed up by Tim Senor. Yes, our resident Timbit, and the UFO report. The man, the myth, and the legend all rolled into one. Yes, this is a man where when I have him on the air each and every time, I still can't believe I get to call him a friend. Grant Cameron has been a UFO researcher since 1975 and was recognized as both the Leeds Conference International Researcher of the Year and the UFO Congress Researcher of the Year as well. He is a world-renowned expert on UFOs, conspiracies, government cover-up, and has spent decades watching and chronicling developments around extraterrestrial contact. He's got a new book out. It's about Jimmy Carter and his UFO sightings. We're going to learn all about that tonight. Mr. Grant Cameron, thank you so much for coming back on Spaced Out Radio, my friend, my guru, my hero. How are you?
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Dave. Happy birthday to you. I'm doing fine.
I may cry now.
Glad to be here, man. It's an honor to be on your 50th birthday guest here.
Well, you know what? I was usually I leave the booking all to myself on that day for our booking team, and I was like, you know what? Who do I want? Who do I want? And you were the only name that popped up in my head, my man.
Well,
thank you for everything that you do, not only for ufology, for Canadian ufology, for being a friend and a mentor and someone who I could call at any time. I mean, the honor really is mine.
Beautiful. And we're hockey buddies. Even though we don't see eye to eye. You see the Florida Panthers won tonight, and that's the idea of oneness. These are the teams that win, is when you buckle down. They have no real superstars, nothing. It's just a bunch of lunch pail guys all working together for nothing. Just wiped out the series. Just an amazing story of how things work in the world.
Well, we'll see if Las Vegas can do it next, because I like that Las Vegas team. I really like
be
that.
Be a good final.
Oh yeah. I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. But you and I could talk hockey all night, but the listeners want some UFOs. So, Grant, you have a brand new book out regarding Jimmy Carter, and you know what? It's kind of for me when I first saw it pop up that it's kind of you going back to your roots of presidents and UFOs and what they know. What made you take the spin backwards?
Well, from time to time, I get stuck back in the swamp. Car goes off the road, and so it's going back to stuff that I really don't think is that critically important. I did spend 3 decades or whatever on the president, and the reason I did the Jimmy Carter thing was, as you probably know, last year I was diagnosed with malignant melanoma, only given a couple months to live. That's what Jimmy Carter's dying of. That's why he's gone into hospice. There is no cure rate. It's game over if you get it. And so when I heard that he was on his deathbed, we originally were going to do a book. Angela Joyner and I were going to do a book on the presidents, and then Steve Bassett and I were going to do a book on the presidents, and it never came to be. And I did the Bill Clinton one, and then I figured, I got all these files, and I figured I'll put the Jimmy Carter stuff that I took off my website. I disassembled the website. I figured I'll put them all the sighting stuff from Jimmy Carter, because I don't think Jimmy Carter people really know the true story. People have this, sort of the rumored stories. And I figured I would just stick it in a book and for history. And then I guess the two other presidential books that I'll eventually do, even though I'm really not that interested, is I'll do the Lyndon Johnson book, because Lyndon Johnson actually did a UFO study that most people don't know about. And I had a lot of the documents leaked to me from that study, and who was involved in the study and what the conclusions were and all this kind of stuff. And the other one will be the Barack Obama, which will be the one president I think that takes the cake in terms of UFOs. I just have to wait for all the documents to come back. I've got tens of thousands of pages of documents that I have filed for, same as John Greenwald filed for the Obama documents. But it's just to put it down for history. It's not really to prove anything, because it really doesn't matter. If the president knows, what difference does it make? It's like COVID. Who cares who did COVID? Who's responsible for COVID? It happened. And so if the president knows, he knows. If he doesn't know, he doesn't know. It's not going to help us one iota. So that's basically why I did the Jimmy Carter book, is to sort of clarify all the records that I had that showed what Jimmy Carter did, what he saw, and what the true story of the Jimmy Carter years are, because there's a lot of stuff that goes around that I really don't disagree, that I disagree with.
Jimmy Carter wasn't a popular president. He came in at a bad time during an economy that was failing in the late 70s, early 80s, before getting taken over by Ronald Reagan and losing that election. But he did have a UFO sighting when he was the governor of Georgia. And this was the one that really seemed, on the popular side of this story, really seemed to pique his interest. What happened there?
Well, first I should clarify that it really didn't happen when he was governor. It actually, that I go through it in the book as to when this sighting happened. The sighting report was filled out in 1973. So he filed it with a group called International UFO something or other in the Midwest. And then NICAP went and took the same report and put their letterhead on top of it. So the reporting was filed in 73. And then most people claim that it happened in 1969. But when I was at the Carter Library getting the documents and all the FOIAs and stuff like that, I was dealing with a guy by the name of Albert, who was an archivist at the Carter Library, and he said that he'd gone to school with Chip Carter. And I actually put part of the email that he sent me, and he said it actually happened before 69. He said Chip Carter told him about it, and they were in university, and he said that was they were out of university before 69. So the sighting definitely happened before 69. And what it was, the story was he was in Leary, Georgia, at a Lions Club meeting. He was there to speak, and there was a bunch of them. I guess they're standing outside waiting for the meeting to begin, and this object appeared. It was a large object that came in close. It was sort of translucent, different colors. They were all looking at this thing, and it was a pretty dramatic sighting, according to Jimmy Carter. And he would later on report this thing. And there was actually a film crew from Georgia who actually went there and tried to interview him about it. They actually got one of the other people that was with Jimmy Carter outside this Lions Club and tried to clarify, what had happened. And in his later years, Jimmy Carter sort of backed away from it, but he had the sighting, and I think that that was probably the biggest regret Jimmy Carter had in his life is reporting the UFO, because he just couldn't live it down. He didn't really like talking about it. And I go through a number of incidents in the book where people tried to get him to talk about it. And in the end, he actually, at the end of the last interviews he did a couple of years ago, he actually said, no, he doesn't really believe that there's extraterrestrials visiting the Earth. And he sort of tries to walk around. He tries to be the president who tells the truth. But when he's talking about it, you can tell that he's carefully picking his words, and he's trying to walk around classification and stuff like that. So he did have a sighting. He actually had two sightings. The other one I describe in the book as well. There was a woman by the name of, I wrote her name down here, Linda Arosima, who was working for she was a photographer for the Defense Mapping Agency. And in 1979, there was a second sighting. Now, Jimmy Carter didn't see this, but what happened was Army One, which is the helicopter, was leaving to go back to the base where Air Force One was. And she was taking photographs, and she had a couple of photographs left at the end of her film. And she shot these two photographs quickly, and she picked up a UFO following Army One. And it's a huge object right in behind Air Force One. And she's a professional photographer working for the government. And so that one, there was a story put out in the UFO community many years ago, maybe 15 years ago. And so when I went to the Carter Library, the actual real photograph is actually in the Carter Library. So it's a real deal. It's not a fake photograph. And basically, so Carter had two UFO sightings, the one that he saw and the one that he didn't see. He's never talked about the second one. And the first one, he's tried to talk about it as little as possible.
Why do you think he was secret about it? Was it because of his position? Was it because he was told to keep quiet on it? Your thoughts?
Well, he was a very religious guy, so there's always these rumored stories about. I deal with in the book. The main story I try to deal with in the book was Jimmy Carter briefed? Did someone walk in the office and tell him what's going on? And there's a story told. I tell the story in the book about the Secret Service agent. I was at the National Security Archives in Washington, D.C., and there was a reporter there working for Frontline, I think, and they were going to do a documentary. And they came across this rumored story, this Secret Service guy who claimed that he was in the UFO briefing. And that's the claim was that Jimmy Carter had Billy Graham in the room. Billy Graham was holding his hand as the briefing was taking place. And they were describing all this. And later on, the Secret Service guy, according to the story that was at the National Security Archives, had said that Jimmy Carter had tears in his eyes. He met him 15 minutes later. So he may have been upset about the ET thing, that this sort of shattered his worldview. But some of it had to do with classification, because I go through the one story that he should probably be most famous for, and that is the story of the remote viewing story. And that Jimmy Carter talks about it in his what do they call it? His diary. He writes his diary, a book. And he says the most amazing thing he saw as president. And that was the whole story about they get a plane goes down. And when Jimmy Carter tells a story, I give the story that he tells. He's told the story a number of times. He absolutely butchers the story. And it's like he's trying not to lie, but he's making stuff up because it's all classified. It was very highly classified. And what happened was a Russian Tupolev 22 went down in Nigeria, in northern Africa. And what happened was there was formerly a secret supersonic jet bomber, and they had turned it into an intelligence platform. So this thing had crashed in Africa, and of course it was a race between the Russians and the Americans who was going to get to this thing first. So the CIA was looking for it. They were using satellites, and they couldn't find this thing. They knew approximately where it was, but they couldn't find it. And so what they did was they put out a request for a remote viewer to find it. So it went to Hal Puthoff at SRI, and it also went to Verona, who was one of the Avery guys. He ran the remote viewing program at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. and they had two separate women who both identified where this location was, and the CIA didn't want to believe it, and so they were going back to the location where they thought it was 60 miles away, and they were going through, and all of a sudden they had these native people coming out of the bush carrying pieces of planes. And this is exactly where these women had identified. The one was very exact. You know, it was in a river, and the tail was sticking up, and it was in the jungle, so you couldn't really see it. And so Jimmy Carter talked about this, but the way he tells the story, he says, a small American plane disappeared, and a medium from California went to look for the thing, and we found it. It was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen in my life, where this woman was able to locate this. And it wasn't. It was and the reason why he had to make up this story was it wasn't an American plane. It was this top secret mission where they recovered a Russian intelligence platform with all the code books and all this kind of stuff. And of course, they didn't want the Russians to know about it. So he makes up this story about an American plane. So that was part of the problem that Carter had, was the whole idea of the briefing thing, that the president, I always maintain the president knows. And as I maintained before, I said that the Lyndon Johnson one, I actually have the notes. I know exactly what the conclusion of the briefing was, what the president was told, who ran the briefing, who was on the panel to investigate. And then we know that Gerald Ford talked to Eric Davis. I bring this up in the book. This is something I released that has never been released before. And that is that when I was about 20 years ago, I was looking for, I was good friends with Robert Emenegger. I don't know if you've ever had him on your show, but he's in his 90s now. But Bob Emenegger ran a documentary called UFOs Past, Present, and Future in 1975. It was set up by the American government to disclose a bunch of UFO stories. And one of the things that they'd given him was the Holloman Air Force Base film. And Bob had this in his possession with Alan Sandler, his associate producer, his producer friend. And they had this film. And in the early 2000s, NIDS was looking for this film. Hal Puthoff was extremely interested in this film. Jacques Vallée was interested in the film. Kit Green, they were all trying to find this Holloman Air Force Base film. Was there an actual film? Did this actually take place? And this whole story of the Holloman Air Force Base film was that Richard Doty says 1964, but Bob says it was May of 1971 when this takes place. It's the Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It's the whole story of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. 3 UFOs come in. It's all planned. They got cameras set up. It happens in the morning, whereas when Steven Spielberg tells the story, he changes it to night. He changes it to Wyoming. It happened at Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico, and the UFO lands, and these aliens come out, and they're greeted by a base officials, and the UFO is put in a hangar. And Bob tells the whole story about, this, where the hangar was and how they investigated the hangar and all this kind of stuff. So the story was that the film had been held by Robert Emenegger, and then it had to be sent back to the Pentagon because they said the time wasn't right to release the film, and they were allowed to release 8 seconds. So the whole thing about the Carter briefing was, there was a rumored story that in June of 1977, in the middle of June, Jimmy Carter was briefed on UFOs, and the Secret Service guy, in his story, he says Jimmy Carter was shown a color film, a 15-minute color film. And as soon as I saw that, I said, hey, that's the Holloman Air Force Base film. Because the rumored story is that the president of the United States is shown in his presidential briefing, is shown the Holloman Air Force Base film of this UFO landing and these beings coming out and stuff like that. And as I said, NIDS was trying to find this thing. And then what happened was, if you read Jacques Vallée's book, Jacques Vallée actually now outs the story, and he tells the story that Eric Davis phoned up Bush Sr. And this is in the book. I tell the whole story. And Eric Davis had told me this story 20 years ago. And the story was put out, the counter story was, this was an A-12 that had flamed out. It was a psychological film by the U.S. Air Force. It was a training film by the Air Force. And there was all these various stories they put out to counter what was on this film. It was not a UFO film. It didn't have aliens on the film and stuff like that. And I remember Bob telling me the story went to Bill Coleman, who was the spokesman for Blue Book. And Coleman, he said, "Come on, tell me why this film." And he said, "Well, it was the lenses. We were using special lenses. We couldn't give up the lenses that we were losing." And he said, "Okay, I'll give you 20 questions." So Bob says, so I asked 20 questions as to why they were withholding this film, why I was not allowed to show the film. And then at the end, he couldn't get it. And then Coleman said, "Oh, okay, I could tell you." He said, "I could tell you, take you out into the Gulf of Mexico. I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you." And it was his way of joking. So, as I said, NIDS was looking for this thing. And Eric Davis, because he was a former intelligence officer, a lot of people don't know that. Eric started in intelligence. He's a member of the former intelligence officers, the same as Richard Doty is. Richard always talks about this. And so he had phoned up President Bush. And he said to him, "Hey, did you ever see the Holloman Air Force Base film?" And Bush said, "Yeah, I saw it." And he said, "Did you see it in your presidential briefing?" And he said, "No, I didn't see it in my presidential briefing. I saw it in when I was a CI director." Now, this is Jacques Vallée telling this story. Jacques Vallée tells us what Eric told him the story. And Eric told me the same story. And so he said, was it a psychological film? No. Was it a training film? No. Was it an A-12 flaming out? No. He said, "Well, what was it?" He said, and Bush said to him, "It was the real deal. It was super secret security around this thing." And then the part I released in the book, because if Jacques Vallée can tell the story, well, then I'll tell the rest of the story, that Eric Davis told me he had also phoned up Gerald Ford, because he was former intelligence. And he phoned up Gerald Ford, and he said to Gerald Ford, he said, "Did you see the Holloman Air Force Base film in your presidential briefing?" And he said, "Yeah, I saw it." And he said, "Well, when was the briefing?" And Ford says, "I'm not going to tell you when the briefing is. Don't even go there." So the whole deal with the Carter thing was, when I saw the whole story was, no, there was no briefing. It was all made up. And the Aquarius document was all made up. And it was all counterintelligence and stuff like that. It was all garbage. When I saw this report that he had seen a 15-minute color film, I said, "Hey, maybe he did get briefed, because how would the Secret Service agent know this thing about the Holloman Air Force Base thing?" And the Holloman Air Force Base thing ended. I don't know if Puthoff ever got it. I know there was a story that Senator Dodd had filed an FOIA on this film and was told it was in a Navy sink. Now, I know NIDS was actually going to bring in Paul Shartle, who was the security manager who actually gave it to Eric to arrange the film for Emmenegger to do this film. He was the security manager at Norton Air Force Base, and he's actually gone public. He's publicly on camera saying what was on the film, that these beings were on the film, that the thing landed, and it was the real deal. And so NIDS was going to bring in Paul Shartle about the time that I was dealing with him. And the reason they were dealing with me was because I knew Bob Emmenegger so well. And they were saying, "What did Bob tell you? What do you know about the film?" All this kind of stuff. And they were trying to find out from me. They were trying to gather this. So NIDS was going to bring in Paul Shartle. And 2 weeks before he was to appear at NIDS to be interviewed by all the NIDS people, he died in a rollover car accident. So this is one of the interesting stories that I think in the book that most people aren't aware of, was this whole idea that the president actually may have been briefed. I always thought it was garbage, but as soon as I saw the Secret Service agent story about the 15-minute color film, I went, wow, how would he know about the 15-minute color film? Because the rumor story is that the president is shown this, but of course it's classified, above top secret and all this kind of stuff. And the president simply can't talk about it.
Grant Cameron is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio, talking about his new book, Jimmy Carter and UFOs. And Grant, there's a lot riding on that 8-second video from Holloman Air Force Base, and new footage has come out where it seems to be that 8 seconds at least debunked. And it looks like an F-4 Phantom coming in for a landing. Do you think, and when we come back from the break, I want to ask you about that. And I want to ask you if you feel that there's maybe a video out there that is more congruent with a UFO, and we're just being shown something to throw us off the path once again. Grant Cameron, one of the greatest ufologists in the history of the game, and a Winnipeg Jets fan, diehard. Spaced Out Radio with Grant Cameron continues right after this. All right, boss, we are clear. Thank you so much, Kira. Very much appreciate that incredible love, and everybody else for the super chats tonight. Thank you for the wow factor here. Really appreciate it. Roy Boy, thank you for the birthday wishes. and I'm trying to get them up as well, so everybody can get a chance to get their name on the screen there. But it's kind of cool. Kind of cool. Hi, Pixie Lara. How are you? I've had this frog in my throat since the airplane, and it's driving me nuts. I hate airplane air. My body doesn't do well with it. Does not do well with it, Grant. We're going to get you to the Vegas party next year. We do. We do.
So you're staying there for a couple of days and then heading home?
Well, I'm already home.
Oh, you're home. I thought you were. Didn't you say you went to Area 51 today?
No, on Sunday.
Oh, okay, on Sunday. Okay. Did everybody go or just you?
Myself, Kira, random guy, Brad Bunt, a good friend of mine, Eric Markham, part of our team, Tim Senor, my UFO report guy, and we all 6 of us packed into a 5-seat Lexus SUV, and I rode in the back. And yeah,
that's a long trip from Vegas, though.
It is, but it's so worth it.
Yeah. Desta had to talk me into it. I didn't want to go. She said, it's only an hour away. I go, okay, we'll go. And that was like 2.5 hours. And it's like, oh my God.
That's not an hour away.
Well, no, we were in Mesquite, Nevada. And she said, oh, it's only an hour from here. And it's like, and it was like, not even, it was on these sort of like, not even main highway. It was just like, it was, I wouldn't have gone if it hadn't been for her. I wouldn't have gone. I'm not into the sighting stuff or the stuff, and then she went at the gate. She was going at the gate at like 100 miles an hour and the gravel's flying. I'm going, slow down. They're going to shoot us, man. I couldn't believe it. It's like
trying to run the gate there or what?
We went to the gate, the Tonopah gate by the place that the restaurant thing you were at there, Rachel's. And, but she was going like, holy cow, is she speeding to go? And I was like, slow down. The gate's coming up here. It's like, holy, because they must have wondered, like, they're going to run the gate. And it's like, but there's nobody at the gate. It's like, I don't know. I guess they have the compound there or whatever, but there's nothing. Right. And then of course it says no photographs, illegal to take photographs. Just stand there, I'll take your photograph. And I'm going, oh. It's the same as when I went to I'm always sensitive when I'm in the States because it's sort of like the rules are different. When I was at the nuclear missile silo there was a nuclear missile, UFO came out of a nuclear missile silo in North Dakota in 1988. So I was with the witnesses and they were showing me, where the missile silo is still there. It's one of the Minuteman missile silos. And I remember the guy's waving at the camera and taking pictures, and I'm going, "Get out of here! I'll never get out of the country." And this thing that says, and that's the one that says Area 51. They've taken it off the Area 51 sign, but at the nuclear missile silo, it still has, lethal threat is authorized. If you get inside the fence or whatever. And this, this is the former head of MUFON for North Dakota is, taking pictures and waving at the camera, and it's like, holy shit. They were watching the whole thing, and it's like, you can do it. You're an American. They could shoot me legally, man.
Oh, I hear you. I hear you there, man.
But the Area 51. So I got the photograph. That's when I put the photograph up, and that's when Richard Doty said, "Oh, you're at the wrong gate. You're at the Tonopah gate." And I said, "Oh, okay. Next time I come, I'll ask you where to go." And he said, "Next time you come," he said, "I'll take you and show you all the secret spots."
Well, that would be nice.
Yeah,
that would be very, very nice.
Maybe get inside. Get inside like Tom DeLonge.
Right? Yeah, let's get the inside from Tom.
Get inside the gate.
Right?
I actually got the audio. I should have maybe given you that for your present instead of the Jimmy Carter tape. But I actually got an interview with John Lear. And I think I recovered it. I talked to John Lear the morning after he was caught with the camo dudes, where they had the motorhome, and Lazar was in the desert with the gun. He escaped that whole thing. I talked to him the morning after. It was kind of weird because we were following the story then. we wrote that book on John Lear. But I actually have him on audio tape the morning after he got caught.
One sec here, Grant. I want to say a big thank you to Cat Chaser, Human Carl, Uncle Bones, Vaughn, Deb, Maddie, RG, Susie, Dan, Kira, and Mike for the super chats. Very much appreciate the love. Here we go, everyone. Second half hour of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Dave Scott. Very much appreciate earning your listening ears. I want to remind you that if you missed most of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. We continue on with Grant Cameron tonight talking Jimmy Carter and UFOs, his new book that is out right now. You can get it on Amazon. And we're talking about this real controversial film at Holloman Air Force Base, where, Grant, it was recently dug up that 8 seconds may be a false 8 seconds of the UFO. What do you think about that?
Poppycock. I'm writing an article right now on how this game is played. I mean, as I said, like there was 20 different explanations. They had their lenses. It was a A12 flaming out. It was this. I mean, you can say it's swamp gas. It's, we make up the way this game is played is that the world is living in naive reality. There are a bunch of skeptics who want things to always be the way they always are. And UFOs are not rational. They're totally irrational. They don't make any sense. And people need to try to put it back in the box. So it's like someone will say, okay, it's this, it's that. And they're trying to put it back in this naive reality. There are no UFOs. There's none of this kind of stuff. The thing is that the object on the 8 seconds is like 4 or 5 miles away. So anybody that says that they can see that this is an F4, it's coming head on. It's coming towards them. If it was moving away, you could say, well, okay, maybe you're picking up the afterburner or whatever, but it's coming towards, and it really doesn't matter. Bob Emenegger told me this was from the original film. He had the original film. The story is not what's on that 8 seconds of film, because the whole question was, I was the one that discovered there was 8 seconds of film. I said to Bob, I said, hey, Bob, I said, you said they took the film back. He said, yeah, they took the film. We got the request from Coleman, and Coleman said it's got to come back to the Pentagon. And these two heavy set people were in a small Datsun, and they got the film, and they were in LA. That's where they were filming this thing. And they took the film and they put it in the back of a Datsun, and they drove across the country back to the Pentagon to take this film back. So I said, but Bob, there's 8 seconds of the film. Is that true? And he said, well, yeah. And I said, well, what? You told me they took it back. He said, well, yeah, Coleman said it's not the right time. And he went through the whole thing. And I said, no, but Bob, there's 8 seconds. So why would they let you have 8 seconds of the film if they took the film back? And he said, because it didn't show anything. He said it didn't show that the classified part was when they get up close, when you can see the aliens and you can see the craft on the ground, they allowed us to show. He said it was used as background. I said, what do you mean background? And he said, that's what he said. He said, well, it didn't show anything. It was way off in the distance. It was just coming over the mountain. That's how it was coming in. So it really doesn't matter what it was. The whole point of the matter was there a film? Was there a Holloman Air Force Base film? And there does seem to be a lot of evidence. If Hal Puthoff is chasing this thing, that there was. This thing definitely is the very beginning. It's way off in the distance. It's just coming over the Holloman Mountains. And I was at Holloman. We went to the base, and those are the mountains of Holloman. That's the background that the base shows. So it's just people trying to put things back into this naive reality where there are no UFOs. It's just everything is swamp gas. Everything is just normal stuff. And it's just nonsense to try to chase all this stupid thing and try to prove this and prove that. And people say, well, I need something good. Give me a good one. Okay, Billy Meyer. How about Billy Meyer? Well, that's too good. That's a fake because it's too good. And it's just this relentless thing that you can have skeptics who will say, even now, the UFO community has gotten into this nonsense about sightings. Well, 95% of sightings are explainable. Well, what study came up with this? The Blue Book said it was 22%, and we got this thing where if we're skeptical, then we sound like we're really rational and we're really smart because we're skeptical. We're smarter than you. You're dumb. You couldn't figure out the film. I figured it out. So any of these counter explanations, it really doesn't matter. People can believe whatever they want to believe. I'm just basically basing it upon what Bob said, and we are actually now, again, there's a producer out of Vancouver, and we are now going after that film, and we are also going after another film that Bob Emenegger said they had, a top secret film, which was the Vandenberg launch. If you've heard the one with Jacobs, tells the story. They've got the downrange cameras from the CIA, and they're filming, and this UFO comes around the Vandenberg missile over the Pacific, and it shoots these little beams of light into the UFO and the missile, and the missile tumbles into the sea. Bob Emenegger had that film. He said it's in a vault in Oregon, and the producer I provided him with all the phone numbers and everything, and we're going after it. The rumor story was James Fox almost got it, but Alan Sandler, who had it, wanted $25,000 just to view the film. And I asked Bob about that, and he said, yeah, I think Alan's got the film, top secret film, never gave it back. He said they were shown all sorts of material. And so the story is much bigger than one little film, one little clip. Bob Emenegger gives me the CIA agent's name who was on the set the whole time. He was dealing with the communication director with Richard Nixon the entire time. He was phoned every day during this documentary. He was friends with Holloman, who was the chief of staff of Richard Nixon. This is a big case. This is a case where they were given this stuff, and Jacques Vallée will attest to the fact that they were contacted again in 1983 to do another documentary for the U.S. government. And it was all called off because Hynek and Jacques Vallée realized that in the 1970s, in the 75 edition of this thing that was released, that the film was pulled, and they figured that it was a setup, that they would get involved, and then they were going to pull a documentary and they would look like fools. So they refused to be a part of it, and they backed out. But they will back up the fact that Emenegger was dealing with Paul Shartle as security manager at Norton Air Force Base, and that's where that's where the Dava archives is, where all the military film was kept at that time. And that general who was the first agent for Ronald Reagan, his name was General Miller, and Bob Scott, who had 2 PhDs, had brought in Hynek, and this story is not questioned either, where Paul Shartle was told by General Miller, show all the UFO film to Hynek. We want to get it out. And he said, no, sir, you got to put in a requisition for this. He said, God damn, I'll have your ass. You show him the film. He said, no, sir, you're going to have to give me a requisition. I can't show him the film. A lot of this stuff is public information. So the Holloman Air Force Base is a big thing, and it's quite respected in terms of people believing it exists. And as I said, there was all sorts of explanations, an A-12, and it was a psychological film, and all these counter, and all that is people who believe in the naive reality, trying to stick everything back into the world is flat, the sun goes around the earth, everything's solid, all this kind of stuff. There's nothing unusual, nothing weird is going on, and if they can prove that, good for them. But I got it from Bob Emenegger, and I trust Bob Emenegger. Bob Emenegger wasn't interested in UFOs. When they first told him they're going to do UFOs, he said, "Are you kidding me? UFOs? You mean that stuff's real?" Because he used to bug his wife, Margaret. He said, Margaret, I could be reading the National Enquirer, the alien had my baby, all that nonsense. And then suddenly he's at Norton Air Force Base, and they want him to do 8 documentaries on 3D holography and all the DARPA stuff to make the defense industry look better because of the Vietnam War. They had a bad public light, and they wanted him working with dolphins, working with 3D holography and stuff like that. And then after these 8 films, we'd like you to do this UFO documentary, and we'd like you to hide it under the other documentaries. And it was financed by MacArthur. The MacArthur Foundation gave them $250,000 to do that documentary. And then at the end, MacArthur said, "Oh, by the way, could you please keep my name off the credits? I don't want my name on the credits. You can keep the money, but I don't want my name on the credits." And so there was a lot of money put into this documentary. And it has a lot of stuff. It has the whole deal with the channeling of the alien. That story has been backed up by Jacques Vallée at the CIA. There's a lot of stuff that Emenager was given. So this one little thing, whether this 8 seconds is somebody can prove it's an 812 or it's a psychological film or whatever. George Bush said it's the real deal, and the security was immense. And that's backed up by Jacques Vallée, and it's backed up by Eric Davis.
Grant, do you think that full film will ever come out? I mean,
No.
that would be the smoking gun.
No, that's one of the stories I tell, and I now take the position of the government. We have no right to know, no right whatsoever. That's what, when Jimmy Carter made this promise. I sent you the audio today of Jimmy Carter actually making the promise in June of 1976 to the National Enquirer. He's in a scrum of reporters, and the National Enquirer reporter asked him, he said, what about your UFO sighting? If you get to be president, will you release it? And that's when he says, if I get to be president, I will release all the UFO files to the American people, except for the stuff that has to do with military weapons. And he also said it to a group in Wisconsin. He said the same thing to this group in Wisconsin. He was going to do it. And so he made the promise. And then I lost your question. What was your question?
Well, just in regards to, the video and will it ever come out?
Oh yeah, no. So Jimmy Carter asked the rumored story that was Danny Sheehan. I tell the whole Danny Sheehan story, and Danny Sheehan, I disagree with Danny Sheehan. Danny Sheehan said that he was briefed by his CIA director George Bush, but George Bush was never CIA director under Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter's wife Rosalind said, absolutely, one thing's going to happen in this administration: George Bush ain't going to be in it. He's to be fired, and he was fired. He was basically, you usually keep the CIA director, move him to the next administration. And that was the first time it didn't happen, where he was told to get lost. And, but what happened was they do the briefings. So when the new president comes in, president-elect, they do intelligence briefings and economic briefings and all this kind of stuff. So the intelligence briefing, they bring in the CIA and they bring in George Bush. And George Bush is doing the intelligence briefing for the incoming president, Jimmy Carter. So he's the president-elect, and he's still working for the Ford administration, and Ford is still in office. And that's when the rumored story was that Jimmy Carter asked for the UFO files. And the story was that George Bush said to him, curiosity is not sufficient need. You have no need to know this. And he said, if you want those files, you need to go to the House Science and Technology Committee. So everybody interprets, well, that's, the Roswell files, and he was turned down on the Roswell files. The president can get whatever he wants. And Jimmy Carter was an A-type personality. If you told Jimmy Carter you weren't going to give it, you were gone. I mean, you wouldn't even get time to, close the door behind you. He would fire you. He was really aggressive. I heard all these stories about who he was. So the fact that the CIA director would deny him this information is absolute nonsense. So what he's basically saying is, I want the files for the people. He said, if you want those files, the Roswell files are not going to be in the House Science and Technology Committee. That's pretty low-level government. It's not going to be there. The president can get the Roswell files, all the stuff that he wants. He just makes a request for it. And as they say, if the president makes a request, the intelligence community will move mountains to make sure the president gets whatever he requests. So he can ask that fast stuff. It was the files for the people. And what he basically said is, no, curiosity on behalf of Dave and Grant and everybody else is not sufficient need to know. You don't need to know. We don't care. And we actually had that again. When I wrote the book on Area 51 and government informants, we went after Dr. Eric Walker for 8 years. And that's when Walker said to us exactly the same thing. He said, you just want to know because you're curious. Admit it. Why should we change the rules and the regulations to satisfy your curiosity? You answer that question for me. And then he even went farther. He said, and if you get it, what are you going to do with it? And this is the point. So people think that, it's like everybody's on this thing about, we want little government, and we want to control, we want, our rights, and we want freedom and all this kind of stuff. But when it comes to this, it's like ufological socialism. It's like, we want the government to give us this. When are they going to, it's like Santa Claus, when are they going to give us disclosure? And it's like the government couldn't care less. The people who control us don't care, because what we've done is, in this society, we bought into fear. We bought into evil Chinese and evil Russians and evil colored people and evil people in the Middle East. And we've got a list of enemies, and it creates a lot of fear. We have all these enemies and all this fear, and we have all these guns. We have an $800+ billion defense budget in the United States. And basically they say, just shut up and pay your taxes. We're taking care of this. We've got all these fearful things. There's all these enemies that are after us, and we're going to take care of this. And I would agree with them that no, you shouldn't release it, because basically if they release it, what's going to happen? Dave's going to do a show. Grant's going to do a podcast. We're going to do it. We're going to get a couple of clicks. And 2 hours later, everybody's going to go, hey, that was an interesting story. I wonder what Donald Trump's up to. Let's see what Donald Trump's up to. It's the news cycle moves so fast. They're going to expose the UFO secret for 15 minutes on Twitter for somebody to do this kind of stuff. And basically what they do is, as soon as you identify where the crafts are, who's working on the crafts, immediately those people's computers are being inundated by Chinese and Russians, and people are looking at their background. Do these scientists drink? Do they like women? And you just expose the whole program, and they just basically say, we are not going to expose it. Curiosity is not sufficient need to know. You don't need to know. We're here to save the world, and they believe they're doing the right thing, and they are not going to disclose the Holloman Air Force Base film or anything else. And that's why they've actually walked around us in terms of what's happening in Congress now. They've actually, I think, won the battle. They've turned it back to sightings. We're willing to look at sightings. We're willing to look at these sightings because skeptics say 95% of all UFOs can be identified. And the other 5%, if we had enough information, we could identify those as well. So sightings, we're not worried about talking about sightings. We're not going to tell you what the sightings are. Blue Book would tell you what sightings are and who had the sightings. We're not even going to tell you what the sightings are. No, we can't. What's the shape? Well, it's classified. We can't tell you that. It's all classified. We don't know anything except, they got a number of sightings they're looking at. And they basically have gone to this thing where they've changed the name. So they call it UAPs because that can be anything. We don't want to use flying saucers. That's how it started. We changed it to UFOs in 1952. The U.S. Air Force did that to UFO because they didn't want to talk about flying saucers because that implies what it is. Now it's even farther. It's UAPs. And what's going to happen is, they're not going to have to deal with where the crash saucers are or any of this kind of stuff or where the technology is or what technology that we're willing to do sightings. And everybody has bought into that and said, we're making somewhere here. And so we're doing this sighting thing. And I think they've basically won the battle. Or if you've heard Danny Sheehan's latest thing, he's saying they had it in the Democratic Senate and they had all this stuff. And when it went to the House, controlled by the Republicans, Danny Sheehan said they started changing the rules and they put the 4-year time limit on it. And they started changing all this stuff and changing all these loopholes to get out of this stuff. And the whole thing, according to Danny Sheehan, is just they've been taken for a ride. And I agree that if we're going to look at sightings, this is a total waste of time, and they know it, and they'll talk sightings until the cows come home, because we've been doing sightings for 80 years and we have not discovered anything. We can do sightings for another 80 years. We're not going to discover anything. It's a total waste of time. And to give you the prime example that I always bring up now is Colm Kelleher tells a story. And he tells a story about being at Skinwalker Ranch with the people, and they've all got the night vision, binoculars. And suddenly this object comes over the ridge, and they're all got their binoculars and they're all watching this thing, and they watch this thing fly with these binoculars, night vision. And at the end of the night, they all compare notes, and everybody saw something different. Same as when I did the 2014, 2015 portals at Mount Shasta and the 2020 portals at Mount Shasta. What I discovered was I talked to people who were inside that portal, that Zendra thing, and everybody had a different experience. So you can have even my own experience. I had 2 experiences where the object started as one object, and when it came close and sat above the car, it was a totally different object. It was it started off as a flaring light, and it turned out it was a triangle sitting on top of the car. So sightings can change, they can morph, they can do whatever they can appear as whatever they want to appear. And so the government will talk till the cows come home about UFO sightings. So they're not going to solve anything with UFO sightings. And we're not going to solve anything with films either, because those will all be discounted. You've got the films, and you say, well, let's have a good film. Well, they had the films with the Nimitz, and that's not good. That's that's an F4. That's whatever planes and bugs on the window, and it's all these people trying to move things back into this naive reality and be skeptical. And skeptics are never right. They've never been right about anything. And moving stuff into naive reality, to me, is left brain. It's the left brain interpreter that doesn't want to move ahead to anything outside. It knows everything. It's got a big ego. It's got everything understood, and it knows more about the UFOs than the aliens. And so you're never going to see that. You're never going to see any, unless you pry it out of their dead cold hands. But other than that, I don't think. And the aliens, or whoever is behind this, I have doubts it's aliens. They're not doing it either. What they're doing is they're doing the theory of wow. And what you realize is that reality is, you're never going to get to the bottom of reality. I've been in this for 50 years, and I think anybody who's been in it for a long time will tell you that when they started, it seemed very simple. And the more you go and the more you go, the more complex it gets. And that's what I think is happening. It's like the idea of the icons on the desktop. You think it's a icon on a desktop. It's not. The icon on a desktop is not your email. The email is something very much different. You're never going to actually see the actual reality of the emails. You're only looking at icons. And I think that's what's happening with the UFO thing. The more you look at it, the more complex it gets, and the less we actually understand about what's going on in terms of this stuff. Reality, the aliens aren't disclosing, and the governments aren't disclosing either.
We got 3 minutes to go before we got to go to break at the top of the hour. Grant Cameron is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. So you're confirming what I have been telling my audience. There is no disclosure. We are in a confirmation movement.
Yeah, well, they're doing the same thing. I said Bill Moore was contacted. He was given material, and so was Tom DeLonge. But it's always plausible deniability. It's like the whole idea of the Bob Lazar thing. I believe Bob Lazar was on the base. He was only on the base 5 times or 6 times. And that's why he started showing John Lear and people, because he got frustrated because they weren't bringing him on the base. And so they showed him a bunch of stuff. He had a bad background. They knew that once he went public with it, that it would all blow up in his face, because he had made up a bunch of stuff and like that. And so you do this plausible deniability. You release the fact, yes, UFOs are here. Something's going on. But the bottom line is, I don't think the government knows either. If you look at Jim Semivan, you look at the thing, I think he's most accurate in terms of saying that there does not appear to be any there. This has to do with consciousness or something. And not only do we not know how to connect the dots, as Semivan says, there does not appear that there may even be any dots. And that's the whole thing, is these are the people that have been briefed. And the idea that the government knows, the big secret is exactly what Obama said. Yes, the films are real, and we really don't know what these things are. That's what I think the big secret is. And so that's why the president can be briefed, but he really doesn't know. We really don't know. And I would maintain that anybody thinks they understand what UFOs or where they're coming from, the stuff I've seen just in the last little while shows, again, the complexity of whatever we're up against here is elusive. It can change to whatever it wants. And we have no clue as to what. We've got hardware, yes. We've got bodies, yes. But that doesn't mean we know what's going on. It's called the core story. Hal put off Jacques Vallée and Kit Green sitting in a Denny's restaurant. And the core story, the bottom line is, we are being visited by something. We have hardware, we have bodies, but we really aren't able to back engineer what's going on. We have no clue what's going on.
Who does know what's going on?
Nobody. I mean, they know that something's going on. That's why they went to Chris Bledsoe tells the story where he went to Chris Bledsoe and they said, "Why, yeah, my property, and my kids, you're upsetting my kids, all you military and intelligence people. Why?" He said, "Well, because you seem to have contact with this thing, and they seem to like you, but they don't seem to like us because they're not in contact with us, and we'd like to know what they're telling you." And that's the whole thing. That's why you got to listen to the experiencers. The people, the experiencers are the ones that are talking to the intelligence. The government is not talking to the intelligence. You got to start talking to the experiencers. We keep going back to this sighting thing that we're going. That's a nuts and bolts thing. It's a naive reality. It's going to turn out to be F4s, or it's going to turn out to be swamp gas, or whatever. It's going to, stuff. The more you look at it, the more it sort of fades away, and it's elusive. It's just. Experiencers is where you got to go, and then you get a different story. You get a different story about spirit guides and about non-locality, and about going instantly across the galaxy from one place to another instantaneously. All these weird things that there's anybody says they got that kind of stuff. Come on, give your head a shake. There's no way we've got that kind of stuff, that technology.
Grant Cameron, we got him for another hour here on Spaced Out Radio, breaking all things down. But what's going on in ufology today? His new book, Jimmy Carter and UFOs, and the weird side of that. Holloman Air Force Base, you name it, we're hitting Grant up tonight on it. We have them for another hour. Oh, I'm loving this show. I hope you are too. We'll be back with the second hour of Spaced Out Radio right after this. All right, we're clear, my friend. I'm going to put you back in the green room for a couple of minutes.
Okay.
We got about 5 minutes, okay?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, I'll be right back, guys. Hey, Grant, I still can't believe Matthew Tkachuk lighting it up for Florida. Oh,
Yeah, he's going to be in the Hall of Fame. Man, I'm surprised. But that's the thing is he brings that that fire to the dressing room, eh?
oh yeah.
It's like,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, and my kid actually had a thing with him. We won a Coke thing where Keith Kachuk had a camp. And there was 15 kids. My kid was one of the kids in the camp. So,
Oh, nice. All right, we got about 40 seconds. Philibaka, how you doing?
did Nicole pass her test?
I don't know if she did or not.
She's there.
Nicole, give us an update.
An update.
Big thank you to Cat Chaser, Human Carl, Uncle Bones, Vaughn, Deb, Maddie, Random Gee, Susie B, Dan, Kira, Mike, and Mennonite Abe for the amazing super chats. It's a wonderful way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. And here we go, everyone, with hour number 2.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Here we go with hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Very much appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on Odyssey Radio, TalkStream Live, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Join us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Megatorium. Megatorium is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. Here we go again. Grant Cameron, famed author, researcher in ufology, one of the best of the best. And we are talking about Jimmy Carter and his UFO sightings. And Grant, thank you so much. I want to start off with a question. Do you think that Jimmy Carter, in his approach to try and disclose UFOs, accidentally outed the stealth program?
He did. That was one of the things got him in a lot of trouble. Was he leaked trying to get reelected. He mentioned the fact that the stealth existed, and that's one of the things we've got to remember. There's a dispute now about Donald Trump talking about the fact that he can, with his mind, he can declassify stuff, and there is this sort of power that the president has, where once a president talks about something, it suddenly becomes instantly declassified. And so you have the example where Jimmy Carter mentioned the stealth, and then suddenly they had to identify, yes, they had the stealth. And the people were upset because they had to try to move these pieces in California from one hangar to another. And the Russian satellites, this is the whole thing about disclosure. As soon as you release it, all the Russian satellites immediately know where they're building the craft. And suddenly there's satellites flying over, and they're watching them move the stealth fighter pieces around, and they start going after the program and trying to infiltrate the program. And the other one that was similar to that was Barack Obama does that with Shirley MacLaine, where he outs Area 51, where he says he's giving this award to Shirley MacLaine, and then the way he does it, he says, I always wondered what was going on at Area 51, because before that they would say it was just a base. Area 51 didn't exist. And he said, everybody always asked me about Area 51, and I didn't know what was going on, so I phoned up Shirley MacLaine. And, of course, everybody laughs, and then he goes, hey, I'm the first president ever to talk about Area 51. And after that, they started using the word Area 51. So the president can declassify, but Jimmy Carter was he had a bad time at the end. He had the Iranian hostage thing, and Reagan had made this deal where not to release the hostages until he became president. And so one of the stories was that Jimmy Carter sat and for the last couple of months of his administration, basically just watched movies. He was very, very, sort of upset about the fact that he had lost and that the Iranian hostage thing was going on. And that came to the whole idea about Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which, as I mentioned before, is the Holloman Air Force Base film. I remember asking Bob Emmenegger, I said, Bob, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. What's strange, Bob? If it weren't for the location of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and if it weren't for the time of day, that looks just like the Holloman Air Force Base film. And he said, I didn't tell you? He said, no, you didn't tell me what? I didn't tell you I gave a copy of the documentary to Steven Spielberg? I said, no, you didn't tell me that. Because Steven Spielberg came out with Close Encounters in 77. The documentary came out in 75. And he said, I told you, Annie Spielberg was a line producer for me. She worked, Steven's sister worked for me. And so this whole idea that, the Jimmy Carter, supposedly that was his favorite, according to the Philadelphia Inquirer, and I produced the news article, that was his favorite movie that he had. And there was a story that a bunch of money had been given to Steven Spielberg for the movie from NASA. And so I did that whole story. And so when I went to the archives, you can file for anything. So so Dave Scott, the Obama administration or the Carter administration. Dave Scott, did Dave Scott ever talk to the president? And they can tell Dave Scott ever talked to the president, or ever was in the same room as the president, or did he ever write a letter to the president? Is there ever correspondence? And they call it an alpha file. So they'll pull the file. So I want Dave Scott's file. So I went and I said, I want the alpha file for Steven Spielberg. And it comes out, and this is Albert guy. He was really puzzled. He said, there's only one thing in here. This doesn't make any sense. And so he opens up the file, and it's a photocopy of a photograph. And what it is the letter from the president to Steven Spielberg saying, I think you would enjoy this photograph. And you can, but they have the letter is over the president's head, and the envelope is over Steven Spielberg's head, but you can see who it is. And it has Steven Spielberg's name on there and stuff like that. And yet the letter was not found, and nor was the original photograph, because they have it all. And of course, I had the archives, who's a big UFO guy. So he actually was digging and scratching and trying to find this kind of stuff. So that was one of the weird things about this whole Steven Spielberg thing, was that you get these files and then it doesn't make sense. Or the other one I had, the other problem you run against in all this kind of stuff is that it takes forever for all the stuff to be declassified. So one of the things Jimmy Carter did is he met with Eric Gary, who was the Prime Minister of Grenada. And he was the guy that was trying to get the UN to get a thing for UFO sightings. And his country was actually overthrown when he was at the UN. The communists took over the country, and then Ronald Reagan went in later and took the country back. But he was having a meeting with Jimmy Carter, and Eric Gary had a UFO sighting and was very interested in UFOs, was trying to get it on the UN. So this meeting was taking place, and it was actually the archivist that actually produced the notes for me. So I went, and of course, then I asked for the notes. I want the notes of the meeting with Eric Gary and the president who was in the meeting, national security notes and all this kind of stuff. And all the notes were classified. There's Zbigniew Brzezinski, who was actually a Canadian, was a national security advisor, and Brzezinski's notes were all still classified. But what I did produce was the archivist actually gave me the handwritten Carter notes of the discussion. There was 6 points or 5 points on a little piece of paper that Carter had, and two of the things that they discussed was mysticism is one thing, because Eric Gary, they were all into voodooism and all that kind of stuff. And the other thing they discussed was UFOs, but we couldn't get any of the notes. Now, maybe the notes are declassified now, the Brzezinski notes from that meeting, because Zbigniew Brzezinski, a national security advisor, was in that meeting, and everything would have been recorded, exactly who said what and all this kind of stuff. And it would have been interesting to find out what that UFO discussion was about, what Jimmy Carter told him about UFOs, because Jimmy Carter, of course, is not opening up about what was done. He admits the meeting took place, but really doesn't really elaborate.
Do you think then that the cover-up that's going on that we see today, they are applying the same rules as they did back then under Jimmy Carter, or is it much stricter now?
Well, the people who control it have moved it as, and I was told this back when I was in contact with the NIDS people. the classification was moved to the aerospace companies. And Tom DeLonge talks about this thing where there's people who donate money, so the government doesn't really own the crafts and all this kind of stuff. It's all this thing to keep it away from being exposed. And that the Canadians already had that back in 1950. It was the Canadian government top secret memo that said, this is the most highly classified subject in the United States. It's rated higher than the H-bomb, which wouldn't be detonated. The test wouldn't be detonated for 2 years. So it's the most highly classified subject, and they have absolutely immense stuff. It's layered and layered and layered and layered in these special access programs down deep where you can't get it. So I think they've learned how to do it. That's where people sort of think, well, that they're going to figure it out. But one of the stories that's always been put out is it costs more for the classification than it does for the program. There's a lot of money spent on classification. And so the chances of getting to this material, I think, is slim, even if you have this whistleblower stuff. So people say, oh, well, there's this whistleblower stuff. Well, you can do the whistleblower stuff, but what's happened? Apparently, there's 25 or 24 witnesses have gone and have testified to Congress. So who are they? Well, we don't know. It's classified. What did they say? I don't know. It's classified. And so it's classified. It's just another level of government. So now Congress knows these rumored stories about these whistleblower people, and they're not going to talk about it either. It's behind closed doors. So that's a big problem, the classification thing. And as Walker told us, he said go study something else. He said, what's the big deal? He said, it's been 40 years. We haven't blown up the world yet. So leave it alone. I mean, Hal Puthoff went to him after we exposed him. Hal Puthoff went and tried to get him to talk, and he didn't. And even Kit Green, who had a security clearance, he actually got clearance from the CIA to go talk to Dr. Eric Walker to find out what was going on. Like, what are you writing these letters, and what's this thing about, live aliens walking around from that some of the aliens at Roswell didn't die and stuff. He was making all these hints. And so Kit Green was sent there by Bill Moore. Bill Moore said, I don't really believe what you're saying about Eric Walker. He's as powerful as you say he is, but I'm going to I got a friend, BJ, who is Blue Jay, the Kit Green. So Kit Green goes to Eric Walker, and they both worked on the Glomar Explorer, the Howard Hughes thing where they recovered the Russian submarine in the Pacific. They were talking about this, the old Glomar Explorer days, because Walker was a torpedo expert. He ran one of the 4 Navy labs at Penn State University, and he was president of Penn State for 15 years, and he was chairman of the board of the biggest military think tank for the U.S. Pentagon. So they talked about the stuff, all the stuff with the Glomar Explorer. And after half an hour, Kit Green suddenly changes the subject to UFOs, and Walker freaks out. And he starts talking like there's somebody listening in the room, and he's talking to a bunch of books in the corner, and he's freaking out. And he said, "You're not the president. I don't tell you anything. You're not the president. If you get that letter from the president, you bring it in here, and I'll make sure it's from the president. And then I can talk to you. But get out of it." And he throws Kit Green out of the office. This is a CIA guy who actually has a clearance to come and talk to me. He throws him out of the office. So this is very sensitive. And even Walker, we knew that Walker kept a file on us when we were doing it took about 8 years. We had all these researchers. I was just sort of the guy that was the ringleader. And I was, all these people say, I can get him to talk. Okay, here's his phone number. And so all these people from around the world were trying to get Walker to talk. And we put all this stuff in a book. But Walker basically, at the end, we knew he had these files, because what he would do is he would photocopy my letter to you, and then he would put some comments on it, and then he'd send it to, I'd take my letter and he'd send it to you with comments on it and stuff like that. He was doing these weird things, which indicated he knew who all the people were, and he was keeping these letters, and he was playing these games. So we knew he had the file. So when he died, we went to we tracked down one of the ladies who had typed one of the letters, and we asked her where the file was, and she said she didn't know she typed the letter, but she never saw it. And then my co-author T. Scott Crane actually got in contact with Dr. Eric Walker's son, who was a medical doctor, and he said yes, there was a file. He said yes, there was a UFO file, and it had 2 crashes. One was in the West, and one was in Pennsylvania, which would have indicated the Kecksburg crash. And he said when it was there, and then when my father died, he had files at the house. He said, well, I took those files from the house to Penn State University, and the UFO file was gone. And he said, I don't know where it went, but it appeared that Walker at the very end was salute, do your job, keep your security, and say, I've got classified files. And they came in because he knew he had congestive heart failure. He knew he was dying. They came in and they got the files. So he was the loyal American security guy right to the bitter end. And because we'd said to him, we said, come on, you're an old guy. Come on, tell us what's going on. You got a chance to tell the world what's going on. And he didn't. He and I always wondered, how can you do that? Because I'm a loudmouth. I'll tell everybody everything. But I couldn't figure out how somebody can go through their life and do all this stuff and nobody will ever know you did it. I mean, you think that you have your little piece in history, but he kept very quiet about it, and all the files were gone. And he had stuff like with the Kecksburg thing where we went after Walker, and he indicated that he had been at Kecksburg. He said, I was only involved for a couple of days, and that was it. Because we asked him, how did you actually? And he said, no, only for a couple of days. That was it. I had other things to do. I'm busy. I was a busy guy. And so then one of the guys from England phoned him and said, were you at Kecksburg? And then he admitted he was at Kecksburg. What's the big deal? And no, I'm not going to talk about it. You're trying to make me talk and all this kind of stuff. And this is the whole deal. So he had a plane. He had a pilot's license. He had flown into Kecksburg. He'd done his job, whatever his job was at Kecksburg, running this recovery operation, flew back to Penn State University, and on Saturday morning did the commencement for all the graduates. The Friday was the crash, and Saturday morning was back at Penn State giving the commencement address. And so you see this stuff that these guys play by the rules, and it's just so highly classified. I mean, how many people have secrets about anything? You get the secret leaks from Snowden and stuff, but that's not sensitive compartmentalized information stuff. That's like secret stuff and very low level stuff. The very high stuff is, it's all numbered. It has, you have to sign to get it out and all this kind of stuff. And they take this stuff very seriously in terms of security. So I can't see anything really shaking loose. They don't care if the stories come loose. I mean, if Bob Lazar goes and tells stories, they don't really care about that because you can't confirm it. It's like the film, the 8-second film. Like, nobody's going to confirm it. Who cares? I mean, let it out. I mean, somebody's going to say it's an F4 and everybody's going to argue about it. And who cares? Nobody's going to confirm it. The thing that they're not going to do is they're going to stand up and say, okay, here's the real deal. And this is how it is. Because if they wanted to disclose, they'd bring the New York Times in, and they would, in the Washington Post, and they would take them to the vaults, and they'd show them the photographs, and the president would do an interview, and they do press conferences, and they'd give them the whole story. They're not doing that. That's not what they're doing. They're doing this gradual thing, almost like the beings are doing. I think they may even have learned it from the intelligence, because that's what the intelligence is doing. It's telling you the story, but it's killing the story. It's not telling you the whole story. You can't confirm it. So you can't get a good photograph. You can't get an alien. You can't get anything like that. They're doing this thing where they're dragging you with breadcrumbs down what I call the theory of wow. They're moving you closer and closer to reality, to what's really going on, because that's how science advances. Science advances by curiosity. And that's what the intelligence is doing. It's making us curious. It's making you look at the next level, and you can't get out of the rabbit hole. You know that. I know that. You have your UFO sighting, and you're stuck. You're not going anywhere. You're going to do this for the rest of your life. You're going to try to figure it out. That's what they want us to do. They don't want the government to give us this thing. The government doesn't want to give it to us, but the beings don't want us to give it. That's our idea. We're walking to a country who say, we're here to bring you freedom, democracy, Jesus, and McDonald's. And that's not what they're doing. They want you to figure it out. They want us to do the research. And so they leave these little breadcrumbs, and we get curious, and consciousness rises, and people learn little things, and we get closer and closer to what is real reality. Right now, we're living in this naive reality where it's nuts and bolts, and there are no UFOs, and it's all crazy nonsense, and there's no ghosts, and it's all just random stuff. And if we have enough information, we can explain all the UFO stuff. That's if you get the Michael Shermer and guys like that, they will absolutely tell you that. If you give me enough information, I will discount everything in the UFO field. It's just a lack of information. And so what they're doing is they're moving us along and dropping breadcrumbs like metal. Why would you drop the metal? Why would you, in the Ubatuba sample, why would you change the metal? You have the same samples, and one in the metal, part of the metal has the isotopes all messed up, and the other one is completely normal, because it makes Gary Nolan and everybody go, what is going on here? And it makes you even more curious, and you start digging again. And that's what they're doing. They're doing these weird things to make you and I go down the rabbit hole, and then, end up getting divorced, and nobody will talk to you, and everybody thinks you're crazy, but you can't put it away. You just can't let go of it.
Grant, before we get to audience questions the next half hour, I want to ask you in regards to the government of Canada now has posted on its own website the Sky Canada Project. It
Yeah.
states about the project. The Sky Canada Project was launched in the fall of 2022 to study how unidentified aerial phenomena reports from the public are managed in Canada and to recommend improvements. The office and the chief science advisor will focus on the Canadian process for capturing and treating UAP observations. There is a long list of this, including a contact name, data.donnays, that you can email at the bottom of it in order to gain more information. Some of the questions that they are trying to answer are: how many UAP observations are reported in Canada each year? Where are UAP observations reported in Canada? Whom are witnessing or witnesses contacting? When reporting, what information is provided or requested? What is done with the collected information? I mean, these are solid questions. They're basic questions, but they're solid questions that need to be asked of the citizens.
But it's the same scam, Dave. It's the same scam. It's 1947. Hey, let's gather UFO sightings. Let's gather them together. Nobody's going to talk to experiencers. They haven't talked to you, I'm sure. They have not talked to me. And I actually filed, I don't know if you know this, I filed an access to information request, and I went after the whole 9 yards, and they have asked for a 6-month extension. They basically are saying we need to go into consultation, and they to answer my request, because I'm very specific about what I want. I had people, they said, would you helping me phrase it and stuff like that. And now they've, instead of the 30 days, they want another 6 months, not till October or whatever. But again, we're not going to go after. You're not going to talk to experiencers. We're just going to gather some more UFO sightings. How many green ones are there? How many red ones? How many fast ones? How many slow ones? And it goes back to this sighting with the binoculars. Everybody sees different stuff. The thing can morph. It can change shape as it comes in, and you're going to have all these things, and it's not going to get us anywhere. It's like collecting stamps. It's a total waste of time. They're doing exactly what the Americans are doing. The biggest part about it is they have not contacted me. They are not going to go through history. So they say that they're all going to go history. Nemmer, who is the Dr. Nemmer, who runs the science advisor to Trudeau, was the head of research at the University of Ottawa. You know what's at the University of Ottawa? Wilbert Smith's files. And Wilbert Smith's files has a top secret memo in there that says, we went and I talked to American officials and I was told the following things. Flying saucers exist. It's the most highly classified subject in the United States. It's of tremendous significance to the Americans. There's a group headed by Dr. Vannevar Bush trying to figure out how this thing is operating. And we were also told by American officials that other things might be associated with the flying saucers, such as mental phenomena. She was the head of research at that university. That document is there. All Wilbur Smith's material is there. Are they going to look at Wilbur Smith's material? He figured it out in 1950. He said, flying saucers exist. It's the most highly classified subject in the United States. Why are we going back to doing UFO sightings again? UFO sightings is the biggest diversion. They can talk about UFO sightings till the cows come home. People are going to say it's an F-4 jet fighter. It's swamp gas. It's just nonsense. It doesn't get us anywhere. The best you can do is to go to the anecdotal stories told by experiencers who will tell you what the beings are telling them and how this thing operates at that level. But as to, things in the sky and what color they are, this isn't going to get us anywhere. This is just something that's going to look good on paper, and everybody's going to get all excited, and you might as well go and collect stamps.
And on that note, we're going to come back with Grant Cameron for another half an hour where we are going to take audience questions from all of you, because I know they are lining up, and I know Grant can get through about 60 of them in the next 30 minutes, which is going to be absolutely great. Grant Cameron, legendary author, researcher in the field of ufology, over 50 years studying the UFO phenomena. He is one of the best of the best. He's a mentor. He's an icon. And we have him for another 30 minutes on Spaced Out Radio. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. The Mighty SOR returns. There we go. We're clear.
Super.
Good times, man. Good times.
Good times. How's the weather there? Good?
Not bad. Not bad. It's clearing up. Tomorrow's supposed to be warm. And let's see here. What else can we do? It's supposed to get rainy this weekend. I'm getting tattooed tomorrow.
Oh, no.
I am.
For 50, you have a big 50 on you, or what's your deal? I always wonder how people get the idea to what's important to do.
Well, I have one that I need to cover up.
Oh, okay.
So I am getting covering it up with a bunch of grass and little trees, and in the middle of it will be a Sasquatch walking through it.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, James Horn. Hey, DD. How you doing, man? DD Galaxy. So I got that appointment at 11 a.m. Then I got to go in and finish up for my boss tomorrow at work because he's got to run his son out of town. And hi, Mark Sanchez, Chairman Meow. Nope, my birthday is today, May 24th, the big 50, 50. Wow.
50.
It was really cool. I got surprised today. My dad drove up.
Wow.
Yeah, he drove up and surprised me for dinner, which was really cool.
That's cool.
Yeah, I was glad that he did.
Yeah, it's a big milestone, 50.
Yeah.
I don't remember back that far.
I wish I could do 40 over again. My 40s were a blast.
Yeah.
Good question there, Super Crazy. We will get to it.
Remind me, I'll talk about the UFO sighting files in Canada. I actually made a request about them.
I can do that. Thanks, Mark Sanchez. It was great to see you again, my man. Great to see you again. All right, Grant, we got about 2 minutes.
Okay.
Two minutes. Little Timmy Senor, how you doing, buddy? He'll be up here in a few weeks. Gonna take him to Tim Hortons so he can try his first ever ice cap and Timbits. Timbits for the Timbit.
Timbits. You got a McDonald's there too, or just a Tim's?
No, we've got A&W, Dairy Queen, Subway, and Tim Hortons.
Okay.
Thank you, Greg, for the super chat. Really appreciate the birthday love, Greg. Thank you. And thank you also to Mike Arrington, W. Decker, Mennonite Abe, Mike, Kira, Dan, Susie B, Random Gee, Maddie, Deb, Vaughn, Uncle Bones, Human Carl, and Cat Chaser as well. Thank you very much for the love. And here we go in about 5 seconds. We passed the halfway point of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Very much appreciate earning your listening ears. Want to remind you that if you missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. We continue on tonight with Grant Cameron. We have until the top of the hour. And Grant, you wanted to make a quick mention about these UFO files that you were looking for through the US or the Canadian government.
Yeah, well, the files that they refer to as the Rakowski files that have gone to the University of Manitoba. I think there's 20,000 UFO sighting files there. And I think Chris had used the figure of 4% that he could get, 4% that were unidentified and the rest were explainable. One of the things people got to remember when you put in one of these sightings, and I got stuck in this in the 70s when I was putting in the sightings from Carmen, is the National Research Council then was replying to UFO sightings, and so was the Dominion Observatory. And get prepared to be told that you're looking at an F4 or swamp gas or whatever, or that you need to go for psychiatric help, because that's basically what you're going to get. Is 96 out of 100 are going to be discounted, and so be prepared to have your UFO sighting discounted and misunderstood.
Weird. Okay, so why are those files important? Why do we need them?
Well, we don't. It's a historic thing. It's the same like me putting out the Jimmy Carter book. I mean, they're being put out there, and somebody like me, most people don't realize, like nobody goes to an archives. Like how many people have been to the University of Manitoba archives? They have 50 spiritual collections of massive, famous spiritual collections here, but nobody goes to archives. I mean, you can't get people to, get past Twitter. For research purposes, someone like me that wants to go in there and look up a case or whatever, and I wanted to go in there to see if someone had been told to go for psychiatric help and stuff like that. And if you get that, then it's game over. I mean, if you get that kind of stuff, so you have to have the protections that people have to be aware that they can be pretty ugly when someone, because that's what they were telling us back in the 70s. They said, oh, the Charlie Red Star thing that we saw was the plane going from Winnipeg to Las Vegas. And it's like, are you kidding me? Now, it's like 30,000 feet up at that time. We've seen that thing every night. This thing is like 100 feet off the ground. Nope. And this is like a major guy at the National Research Council is arguing about this thing. And they just throw anything in the mix. And you end up fighting with these guys. And then you go, oh, that was a total waste of time. And that's why sightings they can go anywhere, because you don't have enough data, and everybody has their impression of what it is, and everybody's left-brained, and everybody's not going to move off the square. It's like negotiating for the debt ceiling. Everybody's got their position, and nobody's moving from their position, and it's kind of a waste of time. And you got to figure it out for yourself. And if there's anything you should listen to, it's experiencers, because the experiencers are telling the stuff, and you see these very unique patterns that experiencers are telling that really tells you, man, there's no way they can be made. Or like the stuff like the ship is bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. Nobody's making that up. That is interesting. Or the fact that there's beings standing behind them when the whole event is going on. That's fantastic. Or you put your hand on a panel and you can fly the craft from here to on the other side of the universe instantaneously. Those kind of bizarre stories that people start to tell in numbers, in bunches, that's impressive stuff. Then you can start learning something. about whether there's an out there, whether there's time, whether there's space. It really starts to make you understand what reality is.
Grant, the importance of experiencers. I'm very pro experiencer, as you know. Gary Nolan has come out and basically said the last couple of weeks, guys, we have to include the experiencers. We'd have no leads if it wasn't for experiencers on where to go with this. You're very pro experiencers. Why does everybody from the government to the scientists involved continue to nix experiential reports?
Well, because it's this skeptical left brain thing where the idea is that unless we can see it, we're not going to believe it. It has to be, you have to be able to see it. You have to be able to duplicate it. So you have to be able to see when the sun is rising, when the sun is setting. You got to be able to make predictions. You got to be able to take charts or whatever. And then you can say that the sun goes around the earth. It doesn't mean anything. It's because you can see it. That's what it's based on, that it's not duplicatable. And that's the deal with the UFO phenomena, is it never happens the same thing twice. I'll almost maintain there are no two aliens that are the same. There are no two UFOs that are the same. We think they're the same, but if you start, I did a thing where I did a PowerPoint presentation where I took all the alien grays, and I took Betty and Barney Hill's gray, Whitley Strieber's gray, Betty Andreasen's gray, and start putting them together and go on top of each other, and none of them are the same. They're all different. We sort of think, even though a tree has 200,000 leaves on it, every single leaf is different. We think all they're the same. And we start seeing these we think there's these patterns, but it's always going to be the same. Or the aliens from 1896 are different than World War II, or the Adamski people, the contactees, or the Greys. And there was no reptilians before 1980, and there was no hybrid babies before 1983. The story is changing. It's changing all the time. So this idea of chasing stuff, if you're going to chase anything, you should chase experiences, because they're telling these very bizarre stories that don't make any sense, but they're all telling the same sort of thing. Like, for example, the flying the ship. Now, they're all touching different things. One's touching a ball, one's touching a panel on the wall, one's touching the panel along the craft, but it's the same thing. The being says, go within yourself. It's within you. If you want to go there, go within you. And they say, boom, they're on the other side of the galaxy. And that's this whole thing. Is there an out there that John Wheeler said? There's no out there. The remote viewing thing, it's all within you. You see yourself as a puny form when within you is the entire universe. And that's where this UFO thing is starting to go, is the fact there may not be an abduction. It may all be an astral body thing, and there may not be any time and space. There may only be one electron, and these kind of things where it's all within us, where you're going within yourself. When you do an out-of-body experience, you go within to go without. And that's where I say that the phenomena is changing. It's starting to show us that the world is not the nuts and bolts place we think it is. It may be, as John Wheeler said, I would not be surprised, and your friend Science Bob was good friends with him. He said, I would not be, and this is the successor to Einstein at Princeton. He said, I would not be at all surprised if the entire universe turned out to be a figment of the imagination. Get ready. That's where we're going. That's where this stuff is heading. It gets weirder and it gets less physical. It gets this more spiritual thing, this thing about instantaneous. It's within you. Go within yourself, people are told. If you want to move the ship, think of where you want to go. The craft is alive. Everything's alive. It's all one thing. You hear these messages over and over again. That's where we start to learn stuff. But because people are into nuts and bolts and they're into seeing is believing, it has to be duplicatable in the lab, and nothing's duplicatable in the lab. There's a placebo effect. There's all this sort of stuff, and people put names on stuff, and they believe they're actually getting somewhere. But in the terms of UFOs, we have not solved anything in 80 years. We haven't got off square one. We're still on, do UFOs exist? And we fight this thing, and let's gather some more sightings. Let's get another thing. Let's get the Canadian project. Let's file UFO sightings. We're going to do this for another 80 years. And everybody's ignoring the fact that the Canadian government already established what this was. They were told what it was. And the fact that Wilbur Smith was an experiencer, and he was dealing with an alien, and there was an entire book that he wrote, and that kind of stuff we're not going to look at. No. We're just going to do stuff that's duplicatable. So good luck. Nothing's going to be duplicatable. It's not going to happen. And the phenomena has shown that numerous times, like at Skinwalker Ranch, they said, "Oh, we got it all figured out. Okay, now we're going to get the photograph. Let's put a camera on this pole and a camera on this pole." And the intelligence starts laughing and turns off the one camera and rips the cables off the other camera and says, "There you go." And it's always, as they said, it was always one step ahead. Not only did it know what they were doing, it knew what they were about to do. And they're just, the thing is playing this game. It's trying to get us to realize it's not the world you think it is. And you do these weird things and you go, I wonder if the world's really physical. It's like, it gets weirder and weirder, and it's moving to the thing where it's all going to be one thing. It's a verb. It's all within our ear. It's a virtual reality. The whole sighting thing is something that's an illusion, the same as everything else. They can appear as whatever they want, and they can change shape, and they can, even the one where I had the 24-year guy, and these things shocked me when I first saw them. They were inside the portal, and the first time the 7 people inside the portal all said they had different experiences. They saw the same being, and then the second time they were the year later, the same being was there, except he was like a hologram. You could see through him. And these people are describing this, and this guy was in the portal who wasn't supposed to be there. He was just a translator. And so I said to him, he's a Navy guy, and I said, "Hey, did you see that hologram guy?" He said, "It wasn't a hologram. He was absolutely solid." I said, "No, they said he was a hologram. He was sort of floating, and you couldn't see anything below his waist." And he said, "I was so close to him, I could see the wrinkles in his face. He was totally solid." These are 2 people seeing the same thing at the same time. And that's where you got to realize, like, what is reality? What are we actually seeing? If you see the blindfolded kids, which I say is research that has totally been ignored by people. You have these kids. We have an Olympic team in Australia of kids with blindfolds that are running around doing stuff testing each other and stuff like that. If you can see with a blindfold on, there's something wrong with our perception of what's going on. And that's the mistake we're making, is it's not the world we think it is. That's what the whole intelligence is trying to do. It's trying to say, pay attention. It's not what you think it is. Take a closer look. What is really going on? And it does these weird things. And as we go along, you can see the phenomenon is getting less and less physical, less and less ET. It's becoming weirder and weirder and weirder. And eventually we'll get to the point where we're going to realize, hey, this is not nuts and bolts ETs the way we thought it was.
Let's get to some audience questions here. Start off with the unknown. In that one photo where Jimmy Carter is resting his head on his hands, looking so sad and disgusted, apparently right after they said something about UFOs, I'm wondering what that meant.
I don't know which photograph that is. I never saw a photograph of him doing that. I mean,
that's okay. Let's move on. Paul is wondering, who are the witnesses who said Carter wept when briefed on non-human intelligence?
Just the one guy. We produced his business card and his bio in the book. Is one Secret Service agent guy, and when he was questioned about it, he was actually questioned, and then he denied it. He said no. He tells this bizarre story about spilling a carafe of water on the Oval Office desk and stuff like this, and he denied that he had been in the briefing and stuff like that. But there was one Secret Service guy that told this story about Jimmy Carter. And then he denied it after. But it was the bizarre thing was that you would deny the story. You'd say, no, the briefing never took place. Like, hell put off, didn't believe the briefing took place. But the fact was that they mentioned this 15-minute color film, which was something almost like the thing where in flying the craft, and the person says, "I became one with the craft, and the craft is alive." That's something you're not going to make up. And the same thing, you're not going to make up that the president saw a 15-minute color film in the UFO briefing. That's a sort of a red flag that there may be some truth to the story. But in terms of the briefing, it's impossible to nail all the stuff down because it's all this classified stuff. And even in 1948, when you had Truman was getting briefings from General Landry, his air advisor, he was giving a briefing every 3 months. So there was about 16 or 17 briefings he got. They were all done orally. So if they were doing oral briefings on UFOs in 1948, they already knew how to cover it up. They're not going to leave the documents lying around on a desk and allow us to see it. They realized right from the word go, this is the biggest story of all times, and it absolutely has to be solidly kept secret. But there's only one source to the thing, but it's kind of a weird source where there's a catch that indicates, hey, maybe this guy actually was telling the truth, that there was a briefing.
All right, let's move on to another question. Let's go to Dave Walters. Grant, what are your thoughts on ChatGPT 4 and artificial intelligence?
Well, artificial intelligence, if you read my book on the UFO sky pilots, you're going to see what artificial intelligence is. That's what it's going to look like in the future. A biological craft that's able to, you can interlock with it, and whatever you think is what the craft does, and the craft can interact with other crafts all around the universe that are linked to it. That's what artificial intelligence is going to look like. What you got to realize is it's not going to be artificial intelligence the way people think it is, because there's always going to be a consciousness. Consciousness is primary. So the artificial intelligence, you have to have the biological intelligence. As long as it's wired and it's just computer type stuff, then you still need the consciousness to put the stuff in. You can have all the computers in the world on the internet. The internet does nothing. And until you have billions of people putting in material, billions of people putting in programs, billions of people building computers, billions of people producing electronics for it. As long as there's not a consciousness, there's no internet. You have to have somebody sitting behind the computer to do it. So that's the thing between the artificial intelligence they're talking about with computers and the artificial intelligence of bio boards. Once you get a bio board, you can train biological system to do certain things. That's where we're going, and that's where we've seen on board the ship that the ships are alive, they're conscious, and you can interact with them. And they actually, some people give them names, the ships, when they're on them.
Okay, continuing on here, let's go to Paramarv. Grant, Project Serpo, how true is this story on the whole? And was Close Encounters of the Third Kind really based on that exchange?
Okay, Serpo is the same old thing. It's what's the gradual disclosure. It's what the alien intelligence is doing, what the government's doing. The government put it out. I remember Eric Davis telling me, he said, and Hell keeps reading that Serpo stuff. I can't believe he's reading that crap. It's like, he was just shocked. And the thing was, Hell would have been reading it because Hell saw classified material in the Serpo stuff. So that's the way you put the story out. You take real material, you surround it with disinformation, you put it out, and then everybody starts fighting. That's what happened with the Holloman Air Force Base film. Bob told me definitely it was May of 1971. Then Richard Doty comes out and says, no, he told Linda Howe. No, it was 1964. And the aliens got lost. They got lost and they ended up at White Sands. And so then, of course, Linda and I started arguing. Is it 64? Is it 70, 71? That's what you do. You release the material in a cloud. That's why they did Area 51. So they released the Area 51 thing with Bob Lazar. Bob Lazar was on the thing. He saw all this kind of stuff. But when he came out, then it all sabotaged. And unfortunately, everybody started going up on the base and looking down at the base, and they had to take more land. And then they eventually got it back under control. But that's the way they do it. You put the material out. So there's true material and there's false material in there. And the story gets out and it gets covered. So everybody goes, there's probably stuff at Area 51, but we can't prove it. That's what they want. They want the story out, but they don't want to spill the milk. They want to keep the thing going. You can't have people back in 1947. I absolutely say Bill Moore was contacted by people who were giving him material, and Tom DeLonge was definitely contacted by people who were giving him classified material. And they gave it to Tom DeLonge rather than the New York Times, because everybody's going to say, Tom DeLonge, who's going to believe Tom DeLonge? I mean, that's why they went to Tom DeLonge and released the material to him.
All right, JSCO. Mr. Cameron, what are your thoughts on the story of Eisenhower meeting with aliens?
I've discussed this a number of times. I say, if you want to take a look at there's always a message behind. I'm writing a book right now with the nuclear connection to UFOs. There's always going to be a connection. The idea of grays, I absolutely maintain there was no grays before 1961. So there's no grays in 1954 dealing with Eisenhower. If you want to know that story, I went to the Eisenhower Library twice to do that story. Bill Moore was there. We both went through all the files and looked at exactly minute by minute where he was. And the plane apparently didn't leave. He was very close. But I say, if there was a meeting between Eisenhower and the aliens, it had to do with what happened 6 days later. 6 days later was the biggest nuclear disaster ever in the world. It was the first test of the I can't remember the name of the series was. It was in the Pacific. They had a 5 megaton nuclear weapon They miscalculated deuterium-7. They thought it was neutral. It wasn't neutral. And the thing was 15 megatons. It was a dirty bomb. It was on the ground, which is the worst kind of thing. There was the radioactive fallout. They had the guys who detonated the bomb were 20 miles away. It disintegrated an island that it was on. They had to evacuate these guys, and they had bed sheets over them, and this radioactive fallout is on top of the guys they're doing it. And then they had an island where they allowed the natives to stay on that island. And they said, let's see how the savages deal with this. And they left them on the island for 48 hours to see how radioactivity would affect people. And these people were eating it. They thought it was snow, and these people are eating this radioactive fallout. So if you want to know what the aliens were there to say, is to say, stop the nuclear stuff. And Eisenhower said, get lost. And they still went ahead with the test. And it was this $1 billion reparations, absolute disaster, the worst nuclear disaster ever with this thing. It happened a couple days after that supposed meeting, February the 20th, 1954. It was I think February the 28th was the test, March 1st in the Pacific.
Okay, continuing on.
Let me make one more point. People say that he was dealing with grays. This makes absolutely no sense. If you're dealing with grays and you're going to exchange for alien abductions, which now look like they're out-of-body experience events, if you're going to, what are you going to do if the grays break the treaty? What are you taking them to court? A treaty with the grays? This is absolute nonsense. The grays can do whatever they want. If the grays are abducting people, they can do whatever they want. You're not going to sign any treaty that they're going to have to abide by. That's total nonsense. There was no grays in 1954, as far as I know.
Jules is asking, what do you think, Grant, about something big happening in 26 or 27?
The big stuff that's going to happen is the separation. I don't think there's going to be a big UFO. The intelligence is doing stuff all the time. As I mentioned this thing tonight, this thing about the beings behind the people on the ship. It's almost like they're dripping this stuff out, and then suddenly, like someone like me catches on and goes, "Hey, do you know what? There's a pattern here." That kind of stuff they're releasing. But there's not going to be a mass landing. They even had one in 54. This 56. The Canadians were told by the aliens there was going to be a mass landing of 5,000 UFOs over Ottawa. They were going to land in mass. Nothing happened. This stuff just keeps going on. That's not what's happening. It's a gradual disclosure. It's this drip, drip, drip thing where they're raising people's consciousness one after another on the ground. They're not going from the top down. We do this. We go in, we're bringing freedom, democracy, Jesus, McDonald's. They're not going to. They know that they're not going to be allowed to emigrate into the United States. They're having enough trouble with the aliens in the United States. They're not going to allow them to walk in there with free energy and build cars with free energy and free labor and all this kind of stuff. This ain't happening. There's no chance that the intelligence is going to drop off the technology and then go back where they came from. This is a thing where they're trying to raise our consciousness to understand it is not the world we think it is. And the idea that we've got to work as one like a hockey team, and that unless you work as one or like all the cells of a body, if one of us goes rogue in a body, it's cancer. If two of us goes rogue, it's two cancers. And that's what they're trying to get across, is this message of oneness, raise consciousness, that it is not the physical world you think it is. It's much more complex. And the more curious they make us, the more we go down the road. And people like Gary Nolan and Putoff and people like that will work on it, and eventually we'll start to chip away at this thing and figure out more and more that it's not the world we thought it was. Every time we discover something new, we have to realize there's something that we had in the past that was wrong. And we live in this ego world where we got it all figured out, and we just need one more thing. We need a mass landing and it'll all be solved. No. The more we go on, the more pieces that are missing, the more pieces that don't fit. That's what they're doing. They're making this thing more complex and more complex and more complex. The message is oneness, and the fact that it's not a physical world the way we think it is. It is non-local, and it is this sort of 3D or this holographic universe or whatever you want to call it. It's not what you think it is, but they got to take you gradually. They can't come in and land on the White House lawn and do our homework for us. It's up to us to do our homework. They are just here to lead us and with breadcrumbs trying to move us down the road.
Grant, tell everybody where they can find your new book.
Amazon is where it is, or I have all my books listed on a Weebly site. It's all connected, one word, which is the basic message that they want us to get. It's all connected. It's all one thing. And so that's where it is. And Facebook is Presidential UFO.
Grant Cameron, the man, the myth, and the UFO legend. Coming up next, we're going to go to Steve Stockton and Among the Missing. Then little Timmy Senor will be here for the UFO report. Stay tuned. Hour 3 is next.
It was an honor, Dave. Happy birthday.
Thanks, boss. Much love to you.
We'll be talking to you later. I'm going to get ready. I got to get up and make breakfast in a few hours. Okay.
All right. Take care. Grant Cameron, everyone. Holy cow, I'm way behind. Christine Lynn, thank you. And Panthers. Rafaela, how are you? All right, I'll be right back, guys. Sorry I didn't get to all your questions, but Grant's long-winded, as you can tell. Be right back. All right. Grant Cameron, everyone. The Grant Cameron. All right. Guy Calgary, how you doing? What were you seeing outside? Northern Lights out? Mr. Cowley, welcome back to the show. Oh, Mr. Cowley loves his spaced out radio. Noodles, how you doing? CS, thank you for the birthday love. Thank you from Greg in Thailand, Mike Arrington, W. Decker, Mennonite Abe, Mike, Kira, Dan, Susie B, Random Gee, Cat Chaser, Carl, Uncle Bones, Vaughn, Deb, Maddie, and now Chris Holm for the amazing super chats. Here we go, everyone.
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hi to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on Odyssey Radio, TalkStream Live at KPNL. All of our archives are free. Join us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor. Hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Megatorium. Megatorium is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as a clam sets a password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. It is that time once again where we head on over to Steve Stockton's Among the Missing for an incredible story about the Goat Man.
Hello, friends. Welcome to Among the Missing YouTube channel on Spaced Out Radio. I'm Steve Stockton, and I'm about to take you on an unbelievable journey of people just like you. Their stories and encounters will haunt us on Among the Missing. Hello, friends. Steve Stockton here with you. Welcome to another episode of ATM on SOR. Tonight, we bring a story from the pen of Barton Nunley. Boatmen and Other Horned Devils. Boatmen and Other Horned Devils. Many people are of the mistaken opinion that the Goat Man phenomena is entirely contained within the state of Maryland. But in truth, the idea originated in the ancient world with the Greek satyrs and the Greek god Pan, who took the form of a satyr, and the Roman fauns and sylvans. Despite the passage of many centuries, people are still seeing these creatures in varying sizes and colors all over the world. These entities were classically described as having a human torso, arms and head, and the lower body and legs of a goat. They were thickly covered with hair, had short horns, and hooked noses. They were also said to be very lustful and fond of strong wine, dancing, and playing the panpipes. Country people paid tribute to them by offering them the first fruits of their harvests, and lambs were also sacrificed in homage to them. And here we have a classic example of the continued activity of the pantheon of the old gods, now stripped of all divinity and delegated to the realms of the demonic. While not all horned inhumanoids fit neatly into the goat man category, it is interesting to note here that the Greeks also recognized other horned entities besides satyrs. The Kilimanjaros, for example, were said to be demonic creatures with shape-shifting abilities, black skin, horns, sharp fangs, and long talons. Their name literally means beautiful centaurs in Old English. In 83 BC, it was recorded that some of the Roman general Sulla's soldiers had captured a satyr as the army marched against Greece through the city of Illyrian in Apollonia, near today's Dirac, Albania. They had surprised the diminutive creature while it was sleeping, according to the account, and eventually trapped it in one of the area's steep canyons. With some difficulty, they captured it and brought it before their general. It had a man's upper body with short horns on its head, hairy arms, and the lower extremities of a cloven-hoofed goat. It was said that the creature whined and moaned pitifully, but could not speak and uttered only inarticulate sounds. Moreover, it carried with it a terribly offensive smell, and, in fact, its appearance was so loathsome to the eyes, ears, and nostrils that Sulla had the creature immediately sent back to the wilderness. More recently, another witness claimed that he had seen a similar creature in Winnipeg, Spain. He had been searching through an old abandoned house in his area in April of 1986, he said, looking for old nails and wood and such, when he heard a commotion coming from upstairs. Thinking that he had disturbed another intruder, the man stood quietly for a few seconds. An eerie, uncomfortable silence then held sway over the dark and foreboding structure, and as the man turned to go, he was confronted by a creature wearing a long white cape, which failed to cover its gnarled goat-like feet. Even more frightening was the creature's red, glowing eyes, which bore into the witness's own and filled him with terror. Quite understandably, he then made for a quick retreat, leaving the demon alone to its haunt. Although they may, or may not, have originated across the Atlantic, the horny devils also seem to find the shores of America much to their liking, making nearly simultaneous appearances in both Kentucky and Virginia. The earliest report of an American appearance of the horned ones comes from Bracken County, Kentucky. There, in 1866, residents of one farm were reportedly terrorized for over a month by the appearance of a most frightening creature, a giant, hair-covered inhumanoid with glowing eyes and two short horns jutting from its forehead. It was further described as being grayish-brown in color, with a barrel chest and large, sharp-looking claws at the end of its paw-like hands. It also had cloven hooves for feet and a long, pointed tail. The entity hissed like a serpent at the frightened witnesses before vanishing in a column of flame. Another goat-man-type beast was seen in Virginia in 1866 and dubbed the Horror of Independent Hill. The witness, a man named Silas Brown, came forward claiming that a terrible monster with large horns and long, sharp claws was feeding regularly on his livestock. He was terrified of the thing, he admitted, which was 3 times the size of a man. Brown claimed that it was grayish-blue in color, but when agitated, it turned completely white and gave off a sickening stench. In 1983, a group of Kansas miners claimed that they were attacked by a terrifying beast while working the night shift in Iola, Kansas. They described the creature as huge and hairy, with blazing red eyes and horns. Terrified by the thing's sudden appearance, the miners all fled their post. In 1964, a group of terrified campers was said to have been harassed throughout the course of an entire evening by the Billowag beast, a gray-colored, man-like giant with long claws and horns on its head, said to appear in the Aliso Canyon area in Santa Paula, California. The beast was allegedly known to have attacked a group of hikers before it vanished into thin air right before their eyes. No reasonable explanation for the creature was ever offered by local authorities. Then, 3 people observed a horny devil while hunting in the woods of Point Isabel, Ohio in 1967. The witnesses, a father, his 15-year-old son, and his brother-in-law, were all startled to happen upon a creature which the boy, Perry Adams, later described as 10 feet tall, a light tan color, with long arms, pointed ears, and short horns on its head. Perry's father reportedly fired on the creature, which screamed loudly, then dissolved into an eerie white mist. Over 50 years later, just what the trio saw still remains a complete mystery. Fort Worth, Texas, was also played host to the Goat Man, or others of his odd kin anyway. Back in the late 1960s, the Lake Worth Monster, as it became commonly known, first came to public notice when it stepped out of the woods in 1967 in front of a group of startled teens who were hanging out on the Moss Point area of the lake. Terrified, they gave the typical goat man description of the beast they saw. A satyr-like ogre, half man, half goat, tall and hairy. Other sightings of goat man and similar horned entities have occurred in numerous locations throughout the country. But Kentucky, where the American versions of the horned devils seem to have started, is where we will end. Goat man is well known within Kentucky, the bluegrass state, especially in Jefferson County, where, back in the late 1940s and 50s, the creature was rumored to live beneath a railroad trestle over Pope Lick Road in the Fisherville area of Louisville. It was dubbed the Pope Lick Monster by the locals and was said to have the power to hypnotize area youth, making them walk out onto the trestle late at night to their doom, either beneath the wheels of an oncoming train or from the 80-foot fall into Pope Lick Creek. The numerous deaths which have occurred there are a matter of public record. Several resident farmers complained of finding livestock ripped to shreds there decades ago, and there's even one account of the creature chasing a Boy Scout troop from the area, screaming at them and throwing stones. Oddly, the Pope Lake monster was commonly considered to have the upper torso of a man and a goat-like head, and some even consider that it may have been nothing more than a Bigfoot creature with mange, as unlikely an explanation as any, one might suppose. Whatever the Pope Lake monster is, the legend still has the power, it seems, even now, to lure victims to their deaths on the railroad trestle there on Pope Lick Road, with the last known victim, an Ohio woman, losing her life there in 2016. Well, friends, there you have it. What do you think of these goat men and other strange horned entities? I look forward to your comments. Thanks again for listening to ATM on SOR. I'm Steve Stockton, and I'll see you a little further on down the trail.
Thank you, Steve, for another great story. And if you want more, head on over to YouTube, type in Among the Missing. And while you're there, hit subscribe, ring the bell. Steve has new stories going up on a daily basis, so it is very much worth the listen. I listen each and every day, so make sure you do too. All right, from the missing to the stars above, it's time for the UFO report. Little Timmy Senor returns.
Nobody's gonna know.
They're gonna know.
Much prefer hanging out with you in person, Tim, than over the microphone, but it's good to see you back on Spaced Out Radio, my friend. Are you all recovered from Vegas?
Oh, yeah, feeling good. It's good to be back in the pilot seat, but what a great time we had. You have some absolutely amazing fans, and we got to hang out with them and share a lot of love and luck. We had some pretty big dollar winners in our group, and it was a lot of fun. We got to hear each other's experiences and share some stories behind the scenes, and we had a lot of excitement. I mean, there was a lot going on and a lot of conversations and a lot of friendships being made. Absolutely.
What was the best moment for you?
Oh, I did, man, so many. Um, I mean, so personally, I won pretty big at the tables. That was pretty fun. That's always a fun moment. But I guess probably being carried in by RG for our live show for our audience, that was a lot of fun. I didn't expect that. Maybe being out at the black mailbox out in the middle of nowhere by Area 51 and being surprised at who we were actually in the presence of without us even really knowing. We'll talk more about that maybe sometime, but meeting the fans, I think, has to be the best moment individually. Getting a chance to hang out with like Pixie Lara, for example, that was awesome. We're hanging out and talking some deep stories that I can't wait to reveal perhaps at some point, even on your show. Like Red, he brought some heat from his military experience. I'd love to bring that forward. Derek Galloway traveling all the way across country from Florida with his wife and not even getting to shake our hand, but knowing that he was there with us was incredible. But just knowing Brad was there and Neil, Susie B hanging out with Dan, Mark Sanchez, amazing digital artist, Brad hanging out with Brad. The list just goes on. But Obi, I think, probably takes the moment where he decides to propose to his now fiance. That was some magic that he decided to
That
share
was
with us.
magic. That was
Yeah.
total magic. You know, I would say that was the biggest highlight because I didn't know that was going to happen.
Yeah.
When Obi came up to me at the nightclub that we were at that overlooked Fremont Street, and he's like, "Dude, I'm not feeling so good," and I'm like, "Why, man?" He goes, "I'm about to propose to my girlfriend." And I'm like, "What? Here?" He goes, "Yeah, man." He goes, "I couldn't think of a better spot to do it than in front of the people I love and care about." So, what an honor. What an absolute honor to be able to capture that moment. And I sent him the video and all the photos that I took of it today. But you know what really, really got to me? And I actually had a couple of emotional moments there. Number one was where we were gathered at the VIP party and watching our listeners be able to, you know, hang out and chat with a lot of their people that they only get to see or hear on podcasts, radio shows, or YouTube channels. And I had so many of our fans come up to me saying, "Dave, you know, I've been to numerous conferences and I've never got to speak to the people who I wanted to speak with. And yet here they are. They're all right here." Whether it was Melinda Leslie or Science Bob or John Ramirez or you know, a plethora of people that we had there. I mean, how about going into the bar and everybody chanting Merle? I mean, that was just fantastic. And I just love the fact I remember there was one point where I just kind of looked in from the bar and just watching everybody kind of getting along and having a drink together and intermingling. You know, it wasn't the special guests on one side and the fans on the other. No, everybody was kind of sitting with everybody and watching people such as yourself, a random guy, go up to complete strangers and listeners saying, "Hey, glad you're here for the party. Thank you for coming," you know, and having those bonds created between our listeners. To me, that was the most important. The second most, you know, after the show was done, because I mean, there's a lot of stress putting that together, but you know, going out to Area 51 on the Sunday, that was very emotional for me. Like I don't know why, but it was absolutely intense when we got out there because I'd never been out there before, only seen it on videos, and I just couldn't take my eyes off the mountains, you know, knowing what's on the other side of that place. And it was very surreal for me and very, very, you know, open minded. And random guy actually gave me a little bit of a shot. He goes, "What, you gonna cry while you're here?" I said, "Yeah, probably," you know. And I honestly felt like, you know, seeing the little alien or the black mailbox and all the roads that lead into those secure areas, you know, and it was kind of it was different, man. It was absolutely different. And it, I don't know quite how to explain it. I felt like a kid at Disneyland for the first time. I really did.
Yeah, we could tell. And it's definitely somewhere different. It's a different kind of place on Earth. And it's definitely a UFO mecca to a lot of people. For me, it felt like any other desert, except you felt like you were always being watched, no matter where you were. Once you reached a certain part out there and there was very little traffic, you're like kind of feeling like a sore thumb sticking out there. And then after we had that glitchy photograph that we received off of Kira's phone, it makes me kind of wonder how close there was observance to us, potentially glitching out our equipment, or what kind of surveillance they were using, if it was surveillance that created that. But very eerie out there. And you start to realize, even when you pull into the parking lot at the little alien, that Big Brother is definitely watching. They've got high-tech surveillance out there disguised as weather stations and things like that. So you start to realize that they know exactly who's coming way before you're even aware you're on the right path. So it's a lot of fun to go and experience that.
Very true. And what an honor to be able to go out there. And I realize for many of you, it may not have been a big deal, but for me, it was one of the highlights of my life. It really was. And next year when we go up to Reno, we're going to move it to the Spaced Out Radio fan party to Reno here for next year, and see how that goes. I want to, I really encourage our listeners to talk to other listeners who were there this year and maybe have done 2 years in a row, to see what it's all about, and how much they really enjoyed being there and getting to intermingle with people. It's the anti-conference get-together is what I like. It's a long title, but it's so worth it. And we're going to pick a date. We're going to start organizing that very, very soon. And we really want to make sure that we take a good look, because we have listeners from all financial categories, those who are living paycheck to paycheck, to those who are retired millionaires. And we want to make sure that everybody gets an opportunity to hang out. And if you're able to do it, we want to have you there. We want to make sure that everybody has that opportunity to be a part of it. And that was that's a big thing for me, Tim, is watching people get to interact with our guests. Watching somebody like Mark Sanchez, when he I was looking earlier today where he took pictures with Geraldine Orozco, and he idolizes Geraldine and loves Geraldine and wants to be able to have an opportunity to chat with her. And he got that. Meeting Ozzy Ange, and her husband flying in all the way from Australia. Meeting Jeff from the UK, who is never in our chat room, but he listens every morning when he wakes up, and he flew out and wanted to be a part of it. I mean, that's just amazing. Catherine, from Atlanta, who is like, Dave, throw me a kiss every night. So mwah, there you go, Catherine. We love you, mama. And, seeing her and how excited she was to be able to see and meet different people. And what an honor. What an honor. By the way, it's probably that time of the night again where we should really say hello to all the agents and agencies out there for hanging on out with us and being at the Golden Nugget and, listening to this show. Give us a call sometime. I know you have the number already, because we don't need to give it to you. And don't forget, we can be bought. We totally can, so just give us a call. It's just that easy, so, I got my nice NSA hat on that I got, and it's, all a part of the fun, man, all a part of the fun. But I do recommend next year that if our listeners who weren't there this year and they couldn't make it for whatever reasoning, there's always reasons that pop up. Many of our regulars wanted to be there, but things happened in their life. Yes, we are going to continue to be there in Reno next year, and we're going to get that planned out ASAP so all of us could save up our pennies, or if you're in Canada, since we don't have pennies, our nickels, and start preparing. Tim, we're going to get to the UFO report. Thank you for making Las Vegas very, very special, big man. Couldn't have done it without you and many others. Coming up next on the UFO report with our resident Tim Bits, we're going to get deep, deep, deep into some UFO stories that we've missed over the last 5-6 days. Stay tuned. Spaced Out Radio continues right after this. All right.
So I got you a little something. It's from all of us. Are you ready? Would you like me to shake it? Or do you want me to just open it?
Open it. Open
All right, here we go, guys. Let's see what Dave got. I bet there's some people that can probably guess. All right, here we go. Oh, look, it's socks. It's lobster socks.
Oh, I love those.
And what else do we have in here? Oh, look, dinosaur feet. Because I know how much you love dinosaur. So
I love those.
Socks, dinosaur feet socks. And oh, look, $50 for 50 years. Cash.
Jesus.
Sweet.
Go spend that on Taco Bell for me.
Right?
Yeah. Well, thank you, my man.
Oh,
And
yeah, buddy.
be seeing you up here in a few weeks, doing a little filming.
That's right. Timbits are on me.
No, I'll buy the first round of Timbits. You kidding me?
Cash. I like that.
Oh,
Evan Walters approves.
Yeah. Evan Walters pissing me off tonight. Pissing me off. Timmy, random guy says, Timmy, tell the people about the pizza.
Yeah, the Pizza Rock. Is that what we're talking about? Because that was some very fine pizza. Indeed. I don't know. That's so random. Are we getting a plug from them? Are you there right now? Oh, he's probably there right now. And he's like, look, you're getting a free plug. Free round. This is definitely free advertising for Pizza Rock in Las Vegas. Best pizza downtown.
For sure. For sure. Oh, there we go.
Yes, pineapple pizza. Yes. Oh, and I've upgraded my area in here, and now I actually have the chat.
Oh, cool.
So
cool.
I'll not be completely clueless. No excuse for missing stuff from our friends in the audience anymore.
Random guy, I did send you a link if you want to come on in after hours and talk about your amazing experience that you had in chatting with Jim Goodall and then making fun of me out at the Alien. More than welcome.
Yeah.
I have had a cough, Tim, since that damn flight back.
And Brad has one as well. I just talked to Brad. Brad has a cough.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I feel great. It's just that stupid. It's a gross. You know when they lock you in to the airplane and then they turn on the air, and it's that gross recycled air. Just kills me.
Yeah, I tried to hold my breath, but 2 hours is rough.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
Yeah, that's nasty. A little wheeziness. Get some echinacea, a lot of teas.
I gotta go throw some Vicks Vapor Rub.
Or you could definitely soothe yourself that way. That works.
Yeah. Sure.
RG is hilarious, by the way. I think everyone can probably agree. He was slamming home some jokes in person. We were having such a good time. He's the funniest guy in person. It's no surprise that he does stand up.
That's why he's the gee. That's why he's the gee.
Yep.
All right. Let's say a quick thank you here to Cat Chaser, to Human Carl, to Vaughn Patrick, Uncle Bones, Deb _Maddie, Random Gee, Susie, and Dan and Kira, Mike, Mennonite Abe, W. Decker, Mike Arrington, Greg in Thailand, Chris, Maggie, and Everett for the amazing super chats. Thank you for the love and support of Spaced Out Radio. Very much appreciate it. And we're going to get going here in about 30 seconds.
Quick joke. You've got the goat man as the topic of the night there. When you've got to go, you've got to go.
Oh, that's terrible. That is terrible.
Dad jokes. I got a million of them. They're all PG.
No, we didn't go to Roswell. That was a little bit of a far drive. We went out to Area 51. Here we go, everyone. We ran at third. We're heading for home tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Dave Scott. Very much appreciate earning your listening ears. Reminder to all of you that if you've missed most of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the Newswire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. We continue on with the UFO report. Random Gee will be in for overtime after the live radio show has ended, and he'll be on our YouTube channel. But Tim Senork now comes in, and Tim, apparently the Aguadilla UFO case has been debunked. What's going on here? There's all these cases all of a sudden being debunked.
Indeed. And so Metabunk, the website run by Mick West, gave a presentation on February 5th of 2023 at the inaugural Limina Symposium, where he gave an analysis of 2D video presentation that challenged that if the size of an object is unknown, then it can be at any distance. It is, however, constrained to a series of lines of sight. And so in the video recently released, he discusses how lines of sight are extracted from video data and how this can be used to determine various possible trajectories. And with the Aguadilla UFO video, he demonstrates that there exists a traversal of lines of sight that is approximate straight line, and it matches exactly the wind that day. This lends significant weight to the hypothesis that the object was something like a pair of wedding lanterns. And so the presentation is about an hour long, and the video shows in detail how potentially using lines of sight, you can determine that this was a slow-moving object. And Dave, this is just one more presentation that we've seen come out from the SCU initially that may prove something is interesting and then later be brought out in another fashion to show another side and potentially an explanation that is a little bit more mundane. And so in this video, we have Kevin Knuth representing the SCU and rebutting with Mick West live on the video. And there seems to be kind of an acceptance, if you will, of some of this explanation. So it's a little bit daunting to kind of get this release in the news that they finally proved this video to be true UAP, and then come out later with another mundane explanation from experts. And so, Dave, what's your initial take on this, and what's your feelings about all of these debunkers?
Well, one of the feelings that I have on this is I don't understand why we have to pass everything through Mick West. Like, who has created this UFO law that this former video game creator who made millions of dollars in helping produce and create the Tony Hawk skateboard series video games is all of a sudden an expert on everything UFO? whether it's fighter pilots or whether it's doctors, lawyers, scientists, people like you, me, Tim, who have seen things. And now it seems like everything has to pass the Mick West test. Why are we giving him and look, Mick has been a guest on this show. He is one of the greatest skeptics of ufology. He wants to believe. Okay, he is a guy who I will say would love for something to be real, but in his eyes, it hasn't passed the litmus test yet. But I don't understand why we have to pass everything through him. Okay, and why his opinion is so much more important than someone else's. Okay, I don't get that. And that isn't a shot against Mick West or the job he is doing. I mean, he obviously has taken this subject very seriously from a different point of view, which I respect. But I don't understand how all of a sudden he's getting articles printed in the New York Post. He's on television as a UFO expert. This man's never seen a UFO. This man doesn't really believe that they're here. How come he's getting the airtime and the conference time when other people who have great information and vast amounts of knowledge regarding this subject are, staying at home and having to watch conferences on the side? I don't get that, Tim. It bugs me.
Yeah. And in my opinion, I'm relatively neutral on this, but I would have to say, his dedication probably and his accuracy and the fact that he has shown all of his work. So when it comes to any kind of piece of data that's presented, there's always a logical explanation for his work. And so even though he's, this is very much hypothetical, this presentation that he gave, and he explains in his presentation that he is letting the software determine quite a lot of the information for him. So there's a lot of, moving parts in the hypothesis, and he's still open to new information at any point. And so I think this is great that we're showing just other options. It's important to be skeptical. We can't just go open-faced to every piece of data that comes our way. And just because one scientist says this is valid doesn't mean that another person with their own specialties can't come forward with their analysis, even if it's conflicting. The more eyes on it, the better. This doesn't prove anything one way or another for us, except that this is another piece of data that's been really rigorously worked over by lots of different people for us to consider. So in my opinion, great, another piece of information for us to consider.
No, and I agree. I absolutely agree with you. We got a lot of topics to cover.
We do.
In a short amount of time. So let's go to the next. Let's go to the next one here, where Gary Nolan from Stanford University believes 100% in a pitch to a bunch of investors that aliens are already here on Earth. He's taken a lot of heat for this from that skeptic crowd.
That's right. And then recently kind of backed up a little bit from that bold statement on Twitter. But a Stanford professor named Gary Nolan, who has researched unidentified aerial phenomena for the US government, says he believes extraterrestrial intelligence has not only visited Earth, but it's been here a long time and it's still here. And so Gary Nolan also claimed that whistleblowers who have worked on reverse engineered downcraft had recently given testimony to Congress, creating a hornet's nest in Washington. And so Nolan, also a professor of pathology at Stanford University School of Medicine, who has published more than 300 research articles and holds up to 40 U.S. patents, made the bombshell comments during a talk at the SALT I Connections conference in New York on Thursday, titled "The Pentagon, Extraterrestrial Intelligence and Crashed UFOs." And so the respected researcher is just one of the most accomplished scientists publicly studying the phenomenon, including by analyzing the brains of people who say they've experienced a UFO encounter. So during this session, moderator Alex Klokas, founder and managing partner of SALT Fund, asked Dr. Nolan, "Do you believe that extraterrestrial has visited planet Earth?" I think you can go a step further, he says. It hasn't just visited, it's been here a long time, and it's still here. You know, people talk about the wow signal, looking for extraterrestrial intelligence. The wow signal is that people see it on an almost regular basis. And that's the communication that's already here. And so, Dave, very bold statement. And a few people have kind of questioned his theory on that. And where's the data, as always? And in a recent tweet on Twitter, he kind of backed off a little. And I'm not going to get into the quote there, but it seems like perhaps he's not feeling so bold on this statement when it comes away from the SALT crowd. Your thoughts?
Well, I thought Gary Nolan was very brave in order to come out and make that statement. And this is something where, you know, the statement that he made was to potential investors into the research of ufology in trying to drum up business. Now, Gary doesn't need the money himself. Okay, but science and research does take money to build equipment, to build, you know, peer reviews, to write everything down and detect the results. And people are obviously very interested in looking in alternative ways to help advance technology and humanity. And that's why he was there. Okay. So for him to come out and say 100% that he believes, we also should know that Gary Nolan is an experiencer of the phenomena as well. So watching people out there be highly critical of his statement, it baffles me. I mean, this is the type of person that we want to be having talk about this subject. We don't need certain scientists out there talking about how experiencers mean nothing. We don't need another lecture from the military or the Pentagon about this subject. We don't need the skeptics to shoot us back, you know, and try and shove us down regarding what we've experienced.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I wasn't going to read the Twitter statement, but I think I will, just because it is in the public purview. And I'm only going to take a portion of it because I don't want to lend to all the players that were in the conversation. But it's hard to feel positive when you also hear in this next statement that he says, this can be the biggest hoax of the millennium for all I care. And then in quotes, though I know what I saw as a young boy. So that's my foundational data point. And then he continues, I'm getting the boxes on my checklist checked while having lots of fun at the same time. And a statement like that feels like, and then he says, there's a method to my madness. It feels very loose at the hip for something where people are kind of, that's a big statement from somebody that's very high in the echelon. And I mean, I love what he made as that big statement, but to back it off with this the very next day, on May 21st, felt like a little bit of a letdown, I guess. How does it make you feel?
Well, I mean, we knew he had to do that. We knew that was coming, right? We knew that was coming and that it was, you know, he was going to be highly criticized for everything that kind of, you know, that statement that was made. We knew that, you know, but to bend to it or maybe his own peers, because a person of Gary Nolan's stature is not really watching what the critics on UFO Twitter are saying. He's not. All right. He may pay attention to it, but he's not really listening to what many of these people say. So it's very interesting to see how that is going to play out with, you know, the aha caught you crowd, as I like to call them, Tim, where they always seem to, you know, when you say something and then you kind of change your stance on something a little bit, saying, look, that was maybe a little bit misconstrued or whatever. You got the aha caught you. You don't even believe things yourself, you know, type of moment. So that may be what it is. I don't know. I'm a Gary Nolan fan. You know, I really am. And I want to see him, he is one of the only big league scientists out there in this field that actually supports what experiencers have gone through and gives experiencers high credibility for bringing their stories, anecdotal or not, to the table, which does help research. And I don't like people picking on him. I really don't. Everything should be critical. Hey, look, I'm all about, we all have to be critical on things. We all got to be able to ask questions. But there's a big difference between, calling a guy stupid or an idiot because he believes that aliens are already here, comparatively to someone who is an arm, of his stature. You don't get to Stanford University being an idiot. You don't get to Stanford University and have a laboratory named after you if you're a dummy. We're talking about a pretty intelligent guy here who's trying his best with the knowledge that he has and the scientific level that he has ascertained to try and bring some legitimacy to this field of study.
Indeed.
I think he deserves a little bit more respect than what he gets online.
Indeed. And it's a bold statement. I hope that he can back it up because it's exciting stuff.
Let's try and sneak in one more here, Tim.
All right. Your choice. Dealer's choice.
All right. Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp on their Weaponized podcast talked about a UFO video that was released from around 29 Palms in California. Tell me about it.
That's right. And coming from the dailymail.com, they're bringing the exclusive of the black half football field size triangular UFO seen hovering over California military base for 10 minutes before vanishing in a dramatic footage that was taken by the Marines themselves back in 2021. And so some of the highlights of this are that a black triangle-shaped UFO with 5 red lights was seen hovering in the night sky at Camp Wilson in California on April 20th of 2021. And at least 50 Marines saw the phenomenon and recorded the craft hanging in the sky for about 10 minutes before it vanished without a trace. And so one stunning picture shot by an officer at Camp Wilson at 29 Palms shows the apparently triangular object with the lights on its edges above the desert mountains where it hovered for those 10 minutes, according to the witness. And the video shows the lights of what some Marines believe to be a craft just hanging in the dark sky, shot between 8:24 p.m. and 8:30 p.m. One video recorded troops shooting a flare into the sky in an attempt to illuminate the object, which had 5 red lights. However, before they could fully illuminate the black triangle, it vanished without a trace. And so having that many people witnessing this and having so many videos out in the public purview, it took no time at all for the public to attempt to come out with other reasonable explanations for this. But soon after the encounter, Marines said dozens of trucks and multiple helicopters rushed to the area of the base, with choppers flying overhead until around 11:30 p.m. that night. So witnesses estimate that, the object's size ranged from the size of a stealth bomber, which has my reader is giving me a hard time, which has a wingspan of 172 feet to approximately half the length of a football field. So journalists Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp acquired 6 pieces of film footage that captured the event from 2 angles, as well as an accompanying photograph, which they are releasing through their podcast Weaponized. And so the footage recorded by the Marines using their smartphone cameras appears to depict the 5 lights arranged in a triangular formation. And so the incident obviously echoes the infamous the infamous Phoenix Lights case, a well-known mass sighting of a giant triangular-shaped UFO that occurred over the city of Phoenix in 1997. And so, Dave, a lot of witnesses, a lot of video, and quite a lot of hype. within 12 hours, this was deeply debunked by not only Mick West, but the Black Vault as well, with some easily found information that made them line this up with some test flares that were being released as part of a conducted military operation and training exercise. So, of course, we immediately have the skeptics with their reasoning, but there is still something to this story that is a big question mark, a big gray area where people aren't sure exactly what was in the sky that night. Dave, it's pretty confusing. Do you have an opinion?
Well, this is one of those ones that I can understand the flare argument. I haven't seen the video. I've just seen the photos taken from the video. And it does look reminiscent of the Phoenix lights, albeit much smaller. Of I believe 5 or 6 lights that are shaped in a V-like pattern or a U-shaped pattern that's spread out. And we know the Marines were doing some nighttime testing and practicing for whatever missions that they were practicing. And I apologize, I don't know the military term for that. But, these guys, they saw something. Now, whether it was flares from an A-10 Thunderbolt or an F-35 or whatever type of craft it may be, maybe that's what it was. But the flares were up there for, I believe, about minimum 10 minutes before they started kind of fading out. Flares do fade out. They do have a time limit on them. So, I mean, this one may be what it is. But I don't think George Knapp and his journalistic experience is going to allow his name to be put on something that's fake. I really don't. 30 seconds, Tim.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. Anytime something like this comes out, it deserves all the attention that we can give it. And we need more information. Hopefully some more witnesses come forward. And I know Jeremy Corbell has put a big shout out. And it's great that it's getting the attention of national TV spots, NBC, ABC. It's being covered all over. So it's bringing attention to the topic, Dave.
Well, I know we'll stay on top of it as well, Tim. Thanks for a great UFO report. As we got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal rocking in the background with Little Brother is watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at work, at home, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat rooms tonight. YouTube, Twitch, LGAB, Facebook, Spreaker, LinkedIn, the Space Travelers Club, and on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio.
I know you're out there somewhere.
Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends,
We're watching.
we own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home.
I know you're out there somewhere watching me.
Yes, the Woo train has docked for the night. But soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we got room for them too. Good night. Timmy.
RG, where are you?
Random Gee. There he is. Random Gee.
What's up, fellas?
Look
Living the
at
dream.
that guy. There he is.
Look, I got my new merch.
Uh-huh.
Watch
Very
the
nice.
bicep. biceps while I do it. No, I'm just kidding. It's like,
That looks good on you.
Excellent.
That looks good. So, do you miss us yet?
profusely. Yes. I
Using-
mostly just miss the grasp of Tim's buttocks and the caress of your beard.
Oh yeah. Winning us money. This guy's a good luck charm, everybody.
Oh, you know what's funny? No one knows about that story.
Oh,
You
good luck
remember it,
charm guy.
Dave? Remember
By the way,
the?
I got a message from Brad to
Yeah.
tell you that last night he tried that again, and it worked.
Yeah, you don't think random guy knows a thing or two about things?
It works.
You literally saw it in person. Am
I
wrong?
worked it. I
Yes.
did it. I won.
Random guy
Did it.
has broken slot machines.
Yes.
It works.
$100,000 in a few weeks. Anyways,
Now,
what are we talking?
Random, I wasn't sure if you wanted to talk about what happened or not, because are you comfortable in talking about that or no?
Sure.
With it all?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, we don't know what happened. It's all speculation. I have a little bit more clear picture of what happened and some of the sub stuff because I went and interviewed people on my own clandestinely, including hotel staff. So I got a little more. I guess I don't know what happened for sure, but I have assumptions now of what is most likely the scenario in play.
Well, let's take our audience through it. During the show, while I was on air, you were having a private conversation with Jim Goodall, and you know that's not really the story. I'll let you kind of paint the picture from there.
Jim, we were sitting in the conference, and Jim's like, "Hey, RG, come here. Let's shoot the shit for a minute." So I'm like, "All right." So we go out to kind of like these are conference rooms. There's corridors, there's chairs, there's places to walk, there's random people, but not a lot because I think there was one other conference going on with something with high school kids down the way or something maybe. So we go outside and we're sitting and our chairs are next to each other like so. And I'm looking over and Jim's looking at me and Jim only basically hears out of one ear. So after about 10 minutes or so, he's like, "Hey, would you mind if we face the chairs? Because I'm having trouble with the background noise to understand each other." I said, "Sure, no problem." Now, what was interesting about this is at the time, by the way, I didn't go out late any of the nights. I didn't party. I was home by midnight every single night. So if you're going to jump to that conclusion, you're wrong. I went home early every night. I didn't go till the wee hours. I had maybe 2 or 3 drinks the entire evening, which random guy drinks like 10 on a normal night when he goes out. So this is not a big deal. It was nothing like that. But I had bought a drink when we came back from pizza. I was with Timmy and some others, and I had bought a drink. And I'm like, "Hey, I think I'm going to go on with Marquise," because the initial plan was Marquise wanted to interview me about whatever during his segment of the show. So before Goodall kidnapped me in a good way, that was what I had anticipated doing when I got back up there. So I'm like, "Hey, let me get a drink because I hate being sober in public places around people that I'm talking to." So I'm joking, only partly. So I grab this, it's like a Jack and Coke. Go upstairs, Goodall pulls me outside. We're sitting next to each other. I set my drink down. Now, for you guys that don't know Jim Goodall, I'm sure you can guess just by watching him here, the man has got a plethora, drink Jules, a plethora, drink again, of information and history. The dude's a freaking internet time machine. And so we're hitting it off. And he's like, "All right, now that I got you face to face, let me fill you out." So he's giving me information and we're talking gray areas. No one's violating anything here, but we're talking around things so that we can understand where we've been and what we know kind of thing. And Jim looks at me, he's like, "All right, you're the real deal," kind of thing. And we're talking, we're having a great time. So I forgot about my drink because we're just, into our kinship now at this point. I noticed about 8 or 10 minutes into this, there's 2 dudes who are not part of SOR. And by the way, Kira, Timmy, a bunch of people know what I'm talking about here. So I'm not, if I'm misspeaking, you can clarify. But so far,
everybody on who was at the event got a lanyard with their name on it. So
Mhm.
that way they could walk to and from the event.
So
These
I
guys
noticed
did
I
not
noticed
have-
there was two guys. One was hanging out at the elevator behind me, and the other guy was hanging out on the column. I'm like, okay, public space, right? Like we're in our own little spot, but it was a little weird, the proximity of this guy to us. And then I noticed things. I've had like foreign intelligence people mess around with us before. I've caught a French team once that were doing surveillance on us. That was fun, but that's a whole nother story for another day. We're sitting there, and I'm like, this is odd. Like, Spidey sense kicked in. This is odd. And I look over, and the dude's doing this on his phone, and his screen's off, and he keeps looking up. And then when he saw me look at him, he just like puts his phone in his pocket, walks down the corridor again, right? I'm like, so he knows I'm watching him at this point. My drink is out of my view. I drank about half of it getting to that situation with Jim, and then I hadn't touched it for like 10 minutes till these dudes showed up. So my drink's like here on a table where Jim can't really see it either because of this column that's right here. I'm building this up so you guys get the full picture of why it concerned me. And, you know, John Ramirez had just finished speaking when this happened. So we got like John Ramirez, good old me. Like there's some people that people would like to know what is on their mind or who they're talking to there. I'm sure of it. So I reach back and I'm like, oh, wait, I haven't had a drink in a little bit. So I reach back and I grab my Jack Coke and I take a big swig, put it down, and Jim's in the middle of a story. It's pretty cool. Almost all the stories are. And literally 30 seconds after I took that drink, I'm like, my vision got blurry. And I have an Apple Watch, like, you know, does like my pulse and all that cool stuff. And all of a sudden, my heart's just going boom, boom, boom. But I literally felt like, am I having a heart attack? Am I going to have a stroke right now? Like, what's going on? So I start breathing. I'm like, okay, I can breathe. I couldn't feel my face, couldn't feel my head at all. It was 100% like anesthesia. If you guys have ever had anesthesia or like, I've never had GHB or anything like that, but it's exactly how people explain it. But I'm 280 pounds. So it was like they kind of miscalculated how much dose they give me. I don't know if that's what happened. But I'm like, I told Jim, I'm like, dude, I got to go to the bathroom. Like I'm fucked up. So I get in the elevator and now I don't trust anybody because I'm like, I'm about to fall out. I don't know if someone's trying to kill me or if I'm just having a medical emergency or what's going on. I call Nicole like ASAP. And I'm like, hey, I don't want to make an issue at the SLR party, but here's what's going on. Record, you know, here's who I saw, what I saw, who I was with, what I remember. If I pass out or end up in the hospital, investigate the F out of this. That's literally what I told her. I'm like, if something goes down. So I go downstairs and I'm hovering at the concierge and they think I'm just being a weirdo. And I'm sitting there, my pulse, so to give you guys an idea, normal human pulse is somewhere between 60 and 100 beats a minute. Mine's higher than most. Mine's usually like 90. I'm an excitable person. My pulse went to like 161 within seconds of drinking that drink and losing my vision, my motor skills, all of that stuff. So I took the elevator down and I'm sitting there, I'm just pounding water. I'm in the bathroom and you know, sink water in Vegas is like toilet water at your house. Like, and I'm just sitting there because I didn't even want to go to the bar, wait in line. I'm like, I need to flush whatever the hell this is out right now. So I'm just sitting there. Everyone's like, oh, you must be drunk. I mean, I probably drank 2 liters of water out of that bathroom faucet in like 30 seconds or a minute and just getting it in me to flush it out. And then I started coming around a little bit, started getting more calm. It started coming down. My vision started coming back. And when I realized I was in control of it, I went back upstairs. I go back upstairs and I told only a few people. I think I told Tim, Kira, Eric Markham, like not many people, because I didn't want to make it a crazy thing, right? Because I don't know exactly what happened, especially at this point. So Kira goes, oh, was it those guys that have been watching us from the elevator? And I was like, might have been a good idea for you to tell me somebody's been watching us. Like, what the, like, you didn't think to tell me? She goes, no. And Kira actually told me that 2 of these guys, and they're not hotel security, they're in plain clothes. And she had 2 guys that had earpieces in. And so she was staying at Circa Hotel, which is not where we were. We were at Golden Nugget. So you got to go downstairs across Fremont Street and about a football field to get to that hotel. And these two guys with earpieces followed her after she interfaced with me from having this episode back to her hotel. And she's like, I ditched them and went out of their door or whatever she did evasively. So I go back in and I told Goodall what happened. And I was like, Goodall, I was like, Jim, I was like, dude, I'm being a freaking weirdo right now, dude. This is crazy. And I go, this is just a paranoia of me. I've been off the job for a while, but you know what I'm talking about. Like, you're paranoid. He goes, Jim looks me dead in the eyes. I go, it's probably just coincidence. These guys are around. These guys are following us. Jim looks at me dead in the eyes. He goes, you know damn well there's not any fucking coincidences. That's what Goodall told. And I was like, all right. So I feel really good about this right now. So yeah, I improved. I made sure people were aware of the situation. As soon as I had those effects and I reported it outwardly, all the guys with earpieces disappeared. All the weirdos with cell phones disappeared. Everybody vanished. And again, this came right after, and I'm not blaming Ramirez, but it came right after he was like, there was a lot of people that know things in that room when all these weirdos showed up. So it's probably being paranoid, but I don't have an explanation for it.
And
that's how it went.
Yoxie Soxy definitely gets the gold medal tonight by asking you if any of them look like Bill Cosby.
They had Jello shots for, I wasn't really suspicious of it though.
So
love it.
What were you able to learn after this?
So I went downstairs and I talked to, I kind of fudged a little bit, but that's what I do. People tend to not question me when I go in that mode. And so I use one of my credentials and then schmooze my way to the head of security. I was like, yeah, can you check the camera, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, yeah. So what I was able to do was find out that there was 3 individuals that had earpieces in, and he confirmed to me that they were not hotel staff or security. And they had definitely been in our corridor, and no one had a view of anything on my drink or anything like that. Evidently that was a blind spot, which there are a lot of those in the hotels, believe it or not. So they weren't able to verify that, but there was 3 individuals that came into the hotel together from Fremont Street with earpieces in and left at the same time, roughly at the same time that all this went through. But no nefarious actions were observed. But I confirmed that with the security dude. So I don't know. I don't know what happened. A lot of people are like, oh, Big Brother, government. That's not, at first I was like, maybe. But then it occurred to me, this is stupid. Like Mr. Ramirez, like they know who he is. FBI, DOD, CIA, they will just call him. My people know who I am. If they thought I was being out of line or didn't want me there, they don't need to play the Men in Black with us, right? Because we've already been behind the curtain. So it's kind of like, that's a stupid thing to do with us. You might as well, and we're all patriots. I think we all have the best intentions. So if they came to us and said, hey, we're not comfortable with you attending this or doing this, I probably would just respect it and be like, cool, I won't do that. I'll do that for, my country or whatever helps you guys. As long as you're not asking me to lie for you or be something I'm not, I don't mind not attending something if that's in the best interest of national security or whatever. Cool. They would do that because they know our personalities. They have our psych profiles. They have our DNA. So I'm more inclined to believe, if anything, it's foreign intelligence. And they're like, hey, we got a CIA guy, an NSA guy, a this guy, a that guy. Let's go. And they're all going to talk, which we were. No one's saying anything they're not supposed to say. But the beauty of being around people that have been in the business, you don't have to actually say it. You can have full conversations with never saying a word just by inferencing and or not saying something, and you guys kind of know what you're getting at. And it's a way we prove each other to each other without having to pull cards or IDs or being that blatant about it.
Right. How do you feel now?
I'm great. Everything's been fine. Yeah. So, and you saw me the next day on Sunday, and it was great. Everything.
So when you say foreign intelligence, what do you, for people like me who don't quite understand that, what does that mean? Like,
so what a lot of people don't know, and so OSI, FBI, I'm sure CIA has a domestic unit, even though they'll never admit it because they're not allowed to. Vegas is one of the top 3 places in the United States for foreign intelligence.
Right.
And the reason for that is it's a point of entry where people will not be scrutinized, because people travel here from all over the world. There's 800,000 people on the strip any given day. So, and even our allies send their operatives here to gain intel. Las Vegas, not only do you have Las Vegas with the obvious stuff that's around here, right? LA is 3-hour drive. You don't have to get on a plane. You don't have to get on a manifest. You fly in internationally to Vegas and you're on a visa from anywhere in the world. You're in LA in 3 hours. No one knows you're there. You can do all your surveillance, interrogations, whatever deals you want to do. Get back to Vegas by lunch. You can literally go in the morning, get back by lunch, show up at the hotel pool like nothing happened, and you did all of your clandestine work. So they're constantly probing, and the number one way they probe is not as simple as just putting a camera on you. They social engineer you. So they become your buddy. They buy you drinks. You're in Vegas in a party mode, right? In most cases. I'm not, because I live here half the time. But like most people, even government employees are human beings. They want to get laid. They want to gamble. They want to have a fun time. This is why the scrutiny for these top secret clearances is so crazy a lot of the times. Because you know how someone is in their day-to-day, but what happens when they get in a special circumstance, or something about their family is at play and leverage, or something about they owe money? That's why the financial stuff is such a big deal. So what they'll do is they'll social engineer people. Oh, hey, we're here partying from Germany or whatever, right? Let me buy you a drink. Oh, these guys are cool. Hey, where you work? You know, like whatever. And they're not even that obvious. It's very subtle the way they do it. So they're very good at what they do. And so because all those people are here trying to get that information and do that stuff, our people are here trying to catch them either doing it or do surveillance on those people. And that's why that happens with the foreign intel.
Well, that's a first
What's that?
for us. Thanks, RG.
If that's what happened, it was the second time it's happened to me, but I didn't get drugged the first time. I was like, you guys didn't realize how fat I was when you made that dose.
RG dose.
You must have gave me a 200-pound man dose and not the 280-pound man dose. Because they'll just walk up and think about this, though. Instead of date raping you, right, or whatever, those kind of activities would take place with GHB, Rohypnol, or a bunch of other things. All they need you to be is loopy. So 2 guys walk up to you, oh, my buddy's had too much. Like, I don't have to be completely unconscious, right? I just have to be out of it. They drag you into a waiting car in valet or out front. Just looks like another drunk dude in Vegas getting in a car. Take you to a hotel room, run some truth serum, do all their things they want to do, and just leave you in a lobby or a bathroom somewhere. It never happened. You have no recollection of anything other than I had a drink with some German guy at a bar. And it was probably a Russian guy using a German accent or whatever. These are the kind of things that happen a lot.
Yep.
Heavy stuff, man.
So this is what I brought back from the little alien. And it's actually hand signed by the author.
Interesting. Yes, Mr. Chuck Clark.
Yeah.
Who, if you guys remember that name, is supposedly the original owner of the video that Logan Paul now has. And we were at his house the other day, but no one knocked on the door. We were right there.
Indeed. And there's actually quite a lot in here that I didn't know. I'm sure RG knows, but
I don't know anything.
Well, I mean, if you've probably already read this since you live out in Nevada. And anyways,
Nevada.
Is it Nevada? I'm
Nevada.
British. It's in my roots. I can't.
No, we hate it when people say Nevada. It's Nevada.
And so what I found interesting and that I learned from you, in fact, which I find so interesting, was that it's great to go out there, but potentially what you're going to be seeing are our assets. But if you want to see something that's not ours, you had some advice on when to go, because if you see something, it's definitely not ours, because certain times of the week,
I
or
think-
maybe with certain weather, you had some pretty good tips.
I just feel like if you're gonna go when people don't expect you to go. That's all I'm saying. And that holds true. I wasn't being specific about that location. I'm just saying in general, if you're ever gonna go sky watching, one way to eliminate, if it's our stuff, most of the government, this isn't everywhere, and I'm not saying anything that's like crazy here. It's just logic. When do people mostly work at their jobs? Right? So think
Monday
about
through
those
Friday.
okay, so think about how many people, show up on the weekends at places to sky watch or whatever. And every place I've ever heard of around the country, they usually get real quiet around those times because of that, right? But that's a good thing. So it comes down to two things. What are you looking for? Do you just want to see something cool, or do you want to see ET, right? Because you're going to see a lot less stuff if you go on a slow day, but it's probably more likely to be the real deal. So it's like,
Yeah. So if you're out there on a day when it's windy and nothing experimental could be flying, and you see something bizarre, it could be something otherworldly. Or if it's on a weekend,
potentially,
at a time of night when they're probably not doing training exercises, and you see something bizarre, it could be somebody.
I think a lot of that plays in. I think that plays into a lot of things. I wanted to ask you, I only caught a little bit of the show tonight. So did you guys discuss 29 Palms tonight?
We covered it.
Okay. And how did you leave that? What is your disposition on that story at this point?
Well, I covered both sides, and
I'm asking you, what do you feel?
Me personally?
Yeah.
It's frustrating, honestly.
Right.
It's super frustrating. I mean, the evidence that's been presented really matches up with flares, and some of the data is showing that this was pretty, small. This wasn't a massive craft. Even if it had stretched across that distance, some of the math isn't lining up for a large craft. It's lending to a smaller sort of array. I mean,
what about individual drones that each have a point of light?
Yeah, I mean, I'm way more
hypothetically
leaning towards that if they're going to linger 25 minutes. And it's really hard. I would need more information before I draw my final conclusion. But typically, if I've got a lot of data and I'm weeding through a bunch of cases, if the weight of the evidence is leaning towards mundane, I would be on to the next case because there's so many cases. This is just one.
What's your gut feeling right now? I'm not going to hold your feet to the fire because new information could come out. But right now, would you put that on the side and work on something else today?
I would move on to the next case. Yeah.
All right. That's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
Did you hear some of the theories that some prominent people had floated today?
Yep. I have. And, I've heard both sides, the rebuttal and the rebuttal of the rebuttal. And I've heard some insiders and some outsiders, and I'm definitely still down the middle. But if I was put, if they were like, draw your conclusion now, I would move on to the next case. This wasn't, it wasn't good enough for me to be thrilled by this one now.
I heard some disturbing things today. And the only reason they're disturbing, I'm not going to put anybody on blast, even though I would love to.
Yeah.
I heard some claims today that I just know are factually impossible or wrong. And the problem was, everybody's allowed an opinion. If someone in chat goes, RG, Tim, I think this and that, I'm like, that's fair. You're just a dude at your house. When we have people that supposedly work for OSI, work for CIA, ex-military, whatever, and they're out here saying some preposterous, and they're respected in the UFO community, that grabbed my attention today. And when they speak in absolutes, especially. And there's certain things like nobody can know everything. So like if I see something and you brought me a ton of stuff over the time. Hey, RG, what do you think of this? And I'm like, 90% it's this because of this, and I'll tell you the reasons why. but I leave the door open that like, RG doesn't know everything, right? If you bring me something, it's going to take a lot because I'm 90%. But if you bring me that 10%, I'll look at it. I'm hearing prominent people that are supposedly involved with disclosure talks on podcasts, work with PhDs in some cases, and they're out saying 100% that's one of our assets, and this is why. And look at that light. Look, I've seen those lights before, and this and that. No, I won't go into why that frustrates me because that puts me in a bad spot. But when you know something to be factually untrue and you see stuff like that, that pisses me off, dude, because that's exactly the kind of stuff that sends you guys chasing your tails. And I saw that today, and it was obnoxious. So more to come on that stuff. But that I've seen that a couple of times now. And here's the thing. I'm not a ufologist. I'm not a researcher. I'm a regular dude. So like, this is your passion. This is Dave's passion and other people's passion. It's a hobby to me. But you mofos keep sucking me in, and now I'm taking it personal when people lie about stuff. I don't like it. I'm like, this guy is full of shit. And the problem is no one knows it. But I know it. But what do I do? Because then how do I prove it? Do I go after that person and say you're full of shit? Oh, really, RG? How do you know? How do you prove that you know? I can't. So I'm not.
Right.
Why even make the claim? Right. In my case, because
I
I'm
would
not
have to
going to
say-
defend. I'm not going to defend it.
And
But
I would say
you guys
consider
know me
this.
well enough. I tell
Right.
you.
Well, consider this too in part of the story, and this is just kind of like from an outsider looking in. I know for a fact that Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp have pre-planned 43 episodes, I believe they announced, of Weaponized, which tells me that they know exactly the stories that they're going to cover. So this is story number whatever, and so they have all this stuff ready to go.
Here, I will go here, and I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No,
but I
no,
will
please.
say this.
Yeah.
Everybody's trying to hang Corbell and Knapp. I'm not going to hang them. And here's why. They're a researcher, a filmmaker, and a news guy, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, their business is content creation for profit.
Right.
I'm not saying that makes them full of shit at all. They seem like decent dudes. And in fact, I've been talking recently to a lot of people that know them personally as my circle expands because of you guys and me being around, and people that are starting to trust me. I've not heard I have not heard a single negative word about these dudes. So I'm not shitting on them when I say this. Right. But their job is to present whatever they have.
Yeah.
And they're doing it because that's how they make their living. It doesn't mean that they're shitting, that they're doing it intentionally. Like if I could meet with Corbell and Knapp and give them the truth about things, they would run with it. I'm 100% sure they would. Mm-hmm. And because they could publish it, make a ton of money, blah, blah, blah. But the thing that frustrates me is all these khaki pant retirees that want to come out here and talk like they're doing disclosure or they're giving facts when most of them were desk nerds or they're 70 and they're bored or I don't know what they're doing in every case. Right. I don't think it's as simple as just misinformation. I don't think it's so bad. It's not even misinformation. It's just
what if this case
wrong.
What if this case reaches Kirkpatrick's desk and he has to consider both sides and he's looking at the data being released by skeptics and he's supposed to consider this because we know that historically he waits for things to cross his desk. He doesn't go out and seek things. So if this crossed his desk and he was supposed to interpret it, where does that lead the conversation? And does it muddy the waters? Do we need more things to be left?
What's Kirkpatrick going to do?
Well, I'm saying, do we need things to be left clandestine and let it be scrutinized behind closed doors rather than feed it to the wolves and then let it pass across his desk?
I am a fan. I'm a proponent. And I know you guys are going to hate to hear this, but hear me out. Hear me out before you grab my throat. I'm a proponent for collating all of this data, all of these incidents in a neutral way so we know they exist. So I don't want them just deleted forever, but I am a proponent of somebody at a high level to go through and be like, not that one, not that one, not that one. And I know you guys are going to hate that, but here's why. 2 reasons. One, national security. I will always default to national security. If I have to ruin the truth for people a little bit to keep all of us safe, I 100% will do that. And I'm fine saying that because I don't do this. I'm not a misinfo. Like, I'm here as a regular dude. So I will say that. On the second level, what that means is anything you get, they're not going to stop you. You can go all the way with it and they will support you. A lot of these incidences that I see personally, I know for sure some of it's our stuff. I'm not going to say which ones or how, but I know it is. And I know that's why there's roadblocks, because our stuff is mixed in with the ET stuff as far as research goes. And what are they supposed to do? You can't do it. You can't talk. You can't let it go. So I am a proponent of like a central unit, a collation of data. And I know it sucks because you never want to trust the government. Maybe it needs to be a panel. I don't know what the logistics of it to make it trustworthy enough, but you need to let them pull some things off the table. I don't think we're going to get anywhere else using any government agency, any hearing, nothing. You'll get absolute zero. Just stop asking. Don't even bother until you get to that point where, like, you know what, guys, we know you're doing some cool stuff, keeping us safe. We appreciate it. Pull those out of the file. Just do it. And give us everything else. We know we gave you 90. Okay, 9 of them are yours. We're not going to ask any questions about those 9. Everybody's happy. That's what needs to happen. Until then, we're not going to get shit. You're not going to get nothing.
And so where do you stand on this case?
The 29 Palms case?
Yes.
I'm leaning flares.
Dave, how do you feel about the case?
I'm not sure.
I can tell you 100% it's not a UFO.
Why can you say that so confidently?
Because everything that's done in the study doesn't make sense. It's still, so for instance, we do have 20-minute flares. Okay, that is something. If you dig deeper to the side footage and you read the accounts where they talk about them dropping individually, that is consistent with a flare. There is nothing in the sky. A UFO is not going to float there and dissipate by its lights. I heard somebody who is a known authority today talk about how the lights are something that we have. It's one of our assets. And these individual lights are power plants on the craft. He was 100% certain about it. And I'm like, dude, they don't fall like that singularly.
And would Marines typically be trained on those?
You need a 31 AVSVAB score to become a Marine. And I love my crayon-eating friends, and I say that in jest because it's inter-military stuff. We always joke about it. But even Air Force dudes, if they're not pilots, aren't going to know. They're like, well, these guys work with flares. Well, if you know there's different kinds of flares for combat, which most Marines, 82 Bravos, and Army, and other people use, yeah, they're usually short duration. They're used for tactical operations. There's also testing flares. All right, some of them are lined up, they're chained together, they float. Some of them there's all kinds of things that go on that would be invisible to you on the ground to keep something illuminated for close to a half an hour. So when I hear something, I know for a fact that a howitzer can only hold a flare for 45 seconds. Okay, fine, but you don't know that's what you're looking at, dude. And there's no way we're testing our assets in front of 50 Marines, especially with some of the stories I heard somebody say today. You know, it's against the law for us to fly test aircraft without FAA appropriated lights. And I'm like, yeah, they really give a crap about that when they're testing top secret UFO type aircraft, dude. But I digress. That one's a non-issue, guys.
Thanks for staying up later.
And on that note, gentlemen, we are going to shut things down for tonight, and I very much appreciate you guys coming on in. Random Guy, good to see you. Little Timmy Sino, good to see you. Tim Biss meeting. And thank you tonight to Cat Chaser, Human Carl, Uncle Bones, Vaughn, Deb, Maddie, Random Guy, Susie, Dan, Kira, Mike, Mennonite Abe, W. Decker, Mike Arrington, Greg, Chris, Maggie, and Everett for the birthday super chats. Very much appreciated. And thank you, Timmy. We'll talk
Happy
to you
birthday,
tomorrow.
Dave.
And big thank you. Tomorrow night on the show, Varla Ventura will be here. We'll talk a little bit more about Las Vegas and her impressiveness. And I'll tell you, Varla is one of the greatest people in this field. She really is. And what a great human being. We'll see you all tomorrow night, everyone.
Stay healthy, my friend.
You too.
If you need bail money, give me a call.
Always, Dad. Take care.
You too.